by the time we get to the minutes, she'll be up and running. So let me know when you're ready.
All right, let me get the recorder starting. Okay, we're ready.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Montclair Planning Board. Notice of this meeting is posted in the lobby of this building and the township's website, being published in the local paper. Being broadcast live on 1034 and stream live on Montclair Government 2. This meeting is a quasi-judicial proceeding, and we will be exercising powers and procedures that resemble a court of law, as we are obligated to act objectively in determining facts and drawing conclusions, and using those conclusions to provide the basis of official action. Excuse me. I would ask that participants this evening restrict their comments and questions during these proceedings to issues that only the board may only legitimately consider in reaching their decision, and that decor appropriately for judicial hearing be maintained at all times. First thing on our agenda this evening is our roll call, and I'm here.
Okay. Vice Chair Brodock. You're muted. You're gonna have to unmute yourself.
Somebody muted me. Sorry about that. I'm here.
Mayor Spiller.
Present.
Mr. Cook.
Here.
Councillor Schlager is trying to connect. Ms. Willis.
Here.
Mr. Rooney is excused. Mr. Ian Wally.
Here.
Ms. Lockman.
Here.
Mr. Barr.
I am remotely virtually here.
Okay. And Mr. Gilmer.
Did you ask him?
Here.
Okay. All right. First item on our agenda are the minutes from October 19th. And we have comments from Ms. Lockman and Vice Chair Brodock. Are there any other changes to the minutes? Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
A second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. I believe
Abstain, Janice. Sorry.
Mr. Cook and Mr. Barr abstained because
Yeah,
they were not at that meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. And we're still waiting. I don't see. Robin on our on the list that I'm looking at yet.
No, she's not here yet.
I'm trying to help her out, but it's not working all that well at the moment.
Well, maybe at least as a stopgap measure, she can dial in, and at least that way she can hear what's going on, and she can look at the her packet.
Okay.
Yeah, not ideal, but I don't know, even dialing in and watching the broadcast perhaps, but
I just emailed her the phone number and meeting code.
All right, well, she'll continue to work through that. We have on our agenda this evening some old business or application on 65 Church Street, urban renewal. And so get started on that.
I'm going to make Mr. McLeod and Mr. Stevie panelists so that they can present. Mr. McLeod and Mr. Stevie, are you connected now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here too.
And your video is working. Okay.
It is amazing things happen in a month, you know?
Okay.
So first of all, let me say thank you to everyone for having us back this evening. And I'll give you just a very quick update of really what the applicant's done in the intervening month. And then we'll dive, I guess, right into Mr. Stevie. We have 3 witnesses who will propose to put up tonight. Mr. Stevie, Sony David from Langen, and Alan Lodian also from Langen. Sony and Alan are the site engineer and traffic engineer respectively. And what we'll do is lead off with Mr. Stevie, kind of summarizing the changes to the plan architecturally that have gone on in the last month in response both to a number of the comments we received from the board and a number of design changes that were necessitated by those. So what I'd like to do, you know, Mr. Stevie, I know was previously sworn. Mr. Arthur, I don't know if you want to re-swear folks as they go or what, but I'll leave it to you.
So generally, I would ask Mr. Stevie to acknowledge once again that you remain under oath, and you understand that, sir?
Yes, I do.
Very good. Thank you.
Great. So Bruce, if you can summarize and what's on the screen right now for the benefit of those who may not be, you know, on the video or otherwise, is a colorized version of the updated architectural renderings that have been prepared by Marchetto Higgins Stevie and are dated as of these are the plans that were submitted to the board and are updated to reflect a colorized site plan. And we, I believe, have marked these as.
I don't know if I don't think I have the colorized on the list of,
Okay.
so I guess it would be A48.
Okay. And I guess it would be A48.
Is that the entire plan set that we're marking that way?
It is. Let me
Unless it's A44, the updated site plan dated 11/5/2020.
Yeah, it's the one I submitted to you Friday electronically. So that should be the same set.
Okay, then I would say it's A44.
Okay, then it's A44. So, Mr. Stevie, I wonder if you could give the board the benefit of just walking through these plans kind of floor by floor and identifying the changes that we've made in response to some of those concerns internally, and then we'll turn to the external changes as well.
Sure. Thank you. It's good to be back tonight. Since we were here last time, we've been very busy working on improvements to the project based on comments from this board, the board's professionals, and comments that were made by the public during the last planning board hearing. We've also had the opportunity to meet and discuss some of the concerns of the board professionals. And so these plans reflect updates based on that information. So I'm going to start quickly by going through some of the plan changes and then dive deeper into the building facade developments. If we can go to the next slide, please. So this is the basement parking level. We had a meeting and discussion with Mr. Giosa, the board's parking consultant, and there were some issues that he had raised in his letter to the board, his report to the board, about some of the parking configurations. And so we looked at ways that we could improve those conditions. And starting in the basement level, we moved the main electric room for the building down into the basement level. This required us to relocate 2 parking spaces to the western portion of the garage. And that just pushed the parking slightly out into the underneath the plaza area, the planted area of the plaza. And this allowed us to take the electric room that was on the upper floor and reconfigure the upper floor parking. So if we can go to the next slide, please.
Wrong way, right?
Right.
Wait, one more. There we, is that it?
That's, oh, you went too far.
Right, I thought so.
It will be the ground floor plan.
There we go.
That's it. So I'll call your attention to the upper right-hand corner, the northwest corner of the parking garage. And right where parking space 28 and 29 are located, that is the location that the electric room previously occupied. And what happened as a result of that, it pushed parking space 28 and 29 out into the drive aisle, reducing the width of the drive aisle. When we spoke to Mr. Giosa, he had suggested that if there was a way that we could widen up that throat, it would make that much more accessible for the public who are going to be parking in that area. And so we did that. We pushed that back into the area that was occupied by the electric room and widened up the access to that portion of the parking garage. The other thing that we discussed that was problematic was that if a car was to proceed down that drive aisle and find out that there was no parking back there, that they had no way of turning around. And so what we did was eliminate a space at the back of the parking garage that would accommodate a turnaround for a car that went back into that location and there was no parking available. So that was another thing that we worked with Mr. Giosa on to resolve that concern in the parking garage. The other thing that, and we'll hear more about this, but the developer for the project has been meeting with the neighbors, and one of the neighbors who has a restaurant on Bloomfield Avenue has suggested that he would like it if there was access to the alleyway behind the building for to gain access to his restaurant. And so we are proposing, or we will be proposing, to put a door in that parking space located at the back of the parking garage to allow access to the alleyway. So we'll be showing in the next round of drawings that we submit, we'll be showing a door out into the alleyway in that location. There were just a couple other minor adjustments made to this floor. And another thing that we did was number and label the parking spaces so that it would be able to be coordinated better with the parking management plan that we'll have further testimony on later. So those are the updates that have been on the first 2 floors. If we can go to the next floor plan. And that would be the first residential floor plan, A3. That's okay. You can even leave it here. The plan changes are pretty much consistent on all of the floors. One of the things that we did on the floor plans, we identified the affordable units, and one of the items that was raised in the planner's report was the discussion about the sizing of the affordable units. And we have had discussions with the owner of the project, and we're going to be moving the affordable units around within the floor plate of the building. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But in this drawing that you see here, we had made some adjustments to the smaller 2-bedroom units to show a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. And again, in further discussion, since we did these drawings, there's been some additional shifts that have happened to the affordable housing units.
Right. And Bruce, let's actually just while we're talking about that, just discuss those issues.
Sure.
Just so that's out there, because you've seen, and I think the board's also seen Ms. Talley's report dated November 2nd of 2020, where there are a number of comments related to the location and size of the affordable units. And I know we've had those conversations with ownership about what the size is supposed to be, and for the benefit of the board, I'm wondering if you can just kind of run through high level the changes that have been made to the 2- and 3-bedroom units, as well as the changes in size that now make those far more compatible with the other units in the building.
Sure. So previously, and as you can see on this exhibit, there is a 2-bedroom affordable that is located in the northwest corner of the building, and it is about 910 square feet. Previously, it was a little smaller than that, and it only had one bathroom. And so, as the planner noted, they were looking for us to adjust the affordable units to be more in line with the market rate units. And so, what we're proposing to do is change some of the market rate units throughout the floor, broadcast throughout the floor plan, and take them exactly as they are and replace them as affordable, or name them as affordable units.
Right.
And so what we're proposing to do now is and primarily the issue arose around the 2-bedroom affordable unit. So previously our 2-bedroom affordables, as I mentioned, were about in the 900 to 950 square foot range. So what we're proposing to do now is swap them with market rate affordables, and they will now range from 1,051 square feet to 1,253 square feet, with an average size of about 1,148 square feet for the affordable 2-bedroom units. And while that smaller 2-bedroom unit is still going to be a 2-bedroom unit, it'll be a market rate 2-bedroom unit and not an affordable 2-bedroom unit.
Right. And so overall, the 2-bedroom range is now 909 square feet to approximately 1,400 square feet. And the affordable range is about 1,050 to 1,250. Is that pretty much the short
That's
summary?
correct.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
And all the units that are either 2 or 3-bedroom are now 2-bath in response to the board's concern in that regard, correct?
That's also correct.
Okay.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No. There were 2 other bits here that I wanted to just touch on with you. I also note that in comment 9, Ms. Talley had suggested that we just wanted to confirm that all the accessibility and adaptability requirements of the International Building Code, as it's applied in New Jersey, would apply to all the units that are being constructed here, correct?
That's correct. The project will meet all of the handicap and all of the building code requirements.
Right. And then just for the board's edification, we'll address, I think, the remainder of these comments throughout kind of the operational side of things, just to discuss them. But generally, the applicant will be complying with the terms of Ms. Talley's letter with regard to the affordable housing issues.
That's correct.
So Bruce, not to completely distract from where you were going, but I know also on this plan you see the addition of the quote unquote amenity space there, right at that same intersection you were just highlighting. Can you describe for the board what that is now?
Sure. So in the reconfiguration of the floor plans and the egress stair component, there was an area left on the hallway. Part of that area became mechanical space, and another part became what we'll call a flex space. It's a flexible amenity space that can be used by residents of the building. For instance, if you're working from home and you want to have a meeting with someone, this room would be available for you to reserve and use to meet with somebody. If you wanted to have a private space to go work for a couple hours, you could go and use that space. So it's a flex space off the hallway.
Okay.
I have a question, if I may. Can I jump in?
Yes.
Since you're talking about that amenity space, when I was looking at this and thinking about the size of the affordable units, I was wondering why you didn't include, perhaps as an idea, to include that amenity space as part of the 2-bedroom and the studio. You'd have to reconfigure the halls a little bit, but you could add a nice chunk of square footage if you added that amenity space to those 2 units. And then you wouldn't have to, I wouldn't think you'd have to move the affordable units around.
Again, I think that the ownership, and they can speak for themselves later, but the discussion we had was that rather than make that adjustment, they were going to swap out the 2-bedroom units for other units broadcast throughout the building that would be more in line with what the township was looking for from that affordable housing, the affordable 2-bedroom sizes.
Well, it's just an idea, throwing it out there. You could certainly square off that amenity space and add it to those 2 affordable units. And you'd have not exactly a straight hallway. You'd have to go around a bit, but it certainly seems to me that you could add to the square footage of the affordable units, leave them as they are now, and that could be a walk-in closet or something, usable space. I mean, come on, you're going to use that little room for workspace? I don't know. Anyway, just throwing it out there.
Okay. We are finding more and more that any space like that in multifamily buildings is becoming desirable. And then oftentimes, just from a structural perspective, when you jog hallways and things like that, it causes undue hardship laying out the structure for the building. So in wood frame construction.
All right. Bruce, you want to show the rest of the changes? I think from here we're going up to the roof, right?
Sure. So these changes that we just discussed happen pretty much on every floor, and then we can go up to the roof plan, which is keep going 2 more floors. This is it. So on the roof plan, there was some discussion at the last presentation regarding the height of the elevator bulkhead and the stair bulkhead adjacent to it. So what we have done is one of the things that we had been looking to do was use the structural component of the stairway to house the generator. We met with our structural engineers and came up with a solution to relocate the generator. It's now located on the northwest corner of the building. And this allowed us to drop the height of the stair bulkhead to match the height of the access vestibule, and the other stair on the roof, and only the elevator bulkhead pops up now, and we've reduced it to the smallest component it can be, rooftop.
All right. So Bruce, yeah, do you want to show the side angles to kind of highlight what you're talking about there with the the change? Would it be better to show that through this plan set or to move to the renders?
What I'd like to say is that the plan set has been updated to reflect all of these changes, but I think that that the exterior building elevation changes that we're going to talk about are probably better served in review in the fly around video and the rendered images that we're going to be talking about next. So I would suggest if we need to, we can come back to these, but if we can, I think that the next thing I'd like to talk about is the three-dimensional video.
Mr. Stevie, before you leave the roof, may I ask a question?
Yes.
On the generator, what is the purpose of the generator? What will it power? I think I asked that last time, and I guess I forgot the answer.
Yeah, the generator is sized to power the emergency life safety features of the building, and to be able to provide enough power to operate the garage doors in the event of a power outage.
So is it just the garage doors, or is it whole lights and
Yeah, no, it's all the life safety. So it's the egress lighting, it's the fire alarm systems, it's all of the life safety functions of the building. There probably will be a few outlets in the lobby area that would be powered up by this, but it's primarily for those functions.
And it's gas powered?
So I have a question though, before you leave what you were just showing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want us to ask questions or do you want to wait until you're finished completely?
Whatever's easier for you.
Okay, so I have a question on A1. So you have these, oh, wait. On A1. Okay, so you have these fast charging stations for electric cars,
Yes.
and they're for tenants only, correct?
In this instance, there are the electric charging station requirement in the redevelopment plan was for the residential parking stalls.
Okay.
But the owner has said that if electric charging stations are desirable, they're difficult to manage. So and again, we meet the requirements of the redevelopment plan by placing them in this location.
Okay, so my question is, if no one has an electric vehicle, will those spots be assigned to somebody, or will they be available to the public?
Again, that's a building management issue, and something that the building management would control.
Wait, so Ms. Lockman, what I can say is everything on the bottom floor here is being geared toward strictly residential parking because of a number of the safety issues that come from introducing public parking up and down the ramp as it's designed, and as the various concerns were raised by Mr. Giosa in talking with him and reviewing the plan. In order to maximize the parking on the ground floor, everything down here is going to be residential. So there are kind of two answers to your question. One is yes, everything down here is residential. And second, from an operational perspective, building management's found that it's virtually impossible to link these up properly with people doing pay to park arrangements and working all that through the various competing vendors that exist for the DC parking and the vendor parking and everything else. So it becomes really problematic, and really for simplicity at this point, because the systems haven't caught up to that idea yet, they've proposed putting them down here.
But still, it begs the question, if there's no one who you're renting space, apartment space to has an electric vehicle, could those spots be assigned to a resident, and then the two spots that are assigned to residents on the ground floor be available for public parking?
They could be. That's possible. A lot of that's going to be, we'll see what comes. We'll see what becomes, the available option. We're certainly open to the idea of putting more charging in here, but we're also recognizing that, the parking's at a premium.
No,
in
no, I'm
Lower
not
Montclair.
suggesting that,
Right.
that there should be parking on the public floor. I'm just suggesting that there'd be 2 more spaces available for public parking if the residents can use these 2 electric charging spots.
Oh,
If
I'm
no
sorry.
one has an electric car, yeah.
No, you're right. You're right. It's certainly a possibility.
Other thing, I thought that the sequence of, this is just me, the sequence of numbering was really odd in this A1. Maybe I'll be changing that. I don't know. Okay, so I was on, can I continue on A2?
Sure.
It's hard to see, but what is a half-stop elevator?
It's just that the parking garage and the lobby are 2 different elevations. So there's a door that opens front and back on the elevator,
Oh, okay.
and you can get in at a lower elevation in the garage to go up to the lobby.
You don't need to, there's no stairs involved. You're still using the regular elevator.
That's correct.
Okay, so what is the purpose of this vestibule that's right next to the half-stop elevator?
It's just security for the residents.
That's a security place? Okay.
Yes.
And there's no door on the trash room?
There will be a door on the trash room.
That's good. Okay. So are the 2 handicap spaces, I understand one would be charged against the tally of the 20 public spaces, right?
Yes, the way the handicap parking is working, we have to provide a minimum clearance, head clearance for handicap vans. So both of the handicap vans are parking on this level. So one of the handicap van spaces will be reserved for residential use, and the other handicap van space will be reserved for public use. And then we are also require an additional handicap public parking spot, which is located at the western side of the garage near the pay stations.
And if there's nobody parked in the handicap spots, they still remain open.
That's correct.
So in a sense, there's only 18 public spots available at any time.
That's not necessarily correct, because there's the retail and public parking are shared together. We also have a parking expert that'll be talking about this, the public parking plan.
Okay. Okay. That's my question. Hold on. Yep, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next exhibit we're going to share with you is the 3-dimensional walk around that actually, if you can rewind that, please. Thank you. Perfect. It was discussed, and it's also a requirement of the redevelopment plan that.
Do you want me to start it?
If you could. If you just pause for 1 second at the beginning. So we've generated this 3D walk around. It's a computer model that walks around the site. It stops at certain intervals. This is actually the view of the public plaza space on Church Street. This is similar to one of the rendering views that we spoke about last time, but this goes completely around the site. So I'm going to let it run, and if you have questions, so you can go ahead and play it, Janice. This is a view along Church Street. Coming back across South Park, looking at Blue Mercury. Then we'll be walking along the eastern side of South Park. You can see the building sticking up above. This is looking west along South Park. Moving along Bloomfield Avenue. This is looking through the courtyard of Bob Orr. Coming up to Valley. Going back to the circle.
I have a question, Mr. Stevens.
Mhm.
What is the alleyway gate made of?
It's currently, and we have our site civil engineer can speak about that, but I believe right now it's currently shown as a wooden fence and gate. And it's shown only on our property. And obviously, we would like to work with the neighbor at some point to see if we can have a joint gate in that location.
I think I might prefer to see metal.
We can consider that.
All right. Bruce, do you want to walk through it? And I think the board will note that there were a number of architectural changes
Right.
from the last go round that are certainly significant. And I think Bruce, if you can kind of talk through those and walk through them on the rendering side of things, I think that'd be useful.
Yes, I think that if I can ask Ms. Talley to open the enlarged elevation study.
There you go.
This is basically a black and white building facade detail of the Church Street side. And there was a couple of comments that the board had raised that we tried to address. The first being the unusual configuration of the windows at the top of the building. As we've been working through the various changes on the plan and the design development of the building has been proceeding, we were able to regularize the windows in the top portion of the building and get them to be a little bit more organized, which was one of the concerns that was raised. The other thing that we did was we actually, and if you can, I don't know if you can zoom in, but we also have an enlargement of this, but we actually rendered or drew in the Norman-sized bricks so that you can see what that patterning looks like. And we also dropped off material samples to the planner's office where we showed We actually included a couple of Norman bricks in the package so that you can see that they're basically the same size as a standard modular brick, but they're stretched out a little bit longer. They're about 12 inches long. And so that we just did this drawing so that you could see that. In addition to that modification, we added a detail banding at the top of the building. This detail banding consists of projecting and recessed metal panels. This happening at the top of the building is reflective of, there's a lot of discussion about how buildings in the central business district of Montclair have cornice lines, and there's a bit of celebration at the top of the building. So we went back and looked at that and looked at a way that we could incorporate a cornice detail into the top of that metal panel portion of the building. And we've done that, and this material change at the top of the building happens around the other sides of the building as well.
Excuse me, is that flash typical?
Pardon?
Is that this corner you're talking about at the top of the building? Is that what's marked cap flash typical?
No, it's right beneath that. It's called raised and recessed paneling and cornice feature. So it's that entire top portion of the building that that's been designed to reflect the cornice line. And you'll be able to see that again when we go to the rendered images that we'll be showing in a few minutes.
Okay.
So, and then again, these drawings were drawn to show the texture in the brick at brick base of the building. And then if you could go to the next image, the next of this grouping, it just zooms in and shows the stepping detail of the brick. It talks about, it shows the soldier coursing and the cast stone sill. So we did these drawings just to give you a little bit more of the flavor of the building facade on Church Street. And then the next package that we'd like to present are updated rendering images. And these are the images that we presented last time. However, we've gone back in and corrected the colors of the rendering to more accurately reflect the colors of the materials that were submitted to the board. And we've also, these reflect the changes to the cornice of the metal panel system and the materials. So this is the updated render of the plaza view from Trinity Place. And you can see that by raising or projecting out the panels at the top of the building, it creates shadow line and interest at the top. And again, this is reflective of the cornice lines that you see on the neighboring. The next image, please.
So I have a question for you before you leave this. Just
Yes.
about the windows. You said that you, is it just the front when you're looking at the building from Church Street that you changed the windows to make them all uniform? Whereas before you had kind of a staggered kind of window look?
Right. Wherever it was possible, we have simplified the window patterning in the building, yes.
So in your opinion, as an architect, which do you prefer? What you originally put forth?
Well, the original configuration was based on interior layouts that we had for the plans. And since that point in time, we were able to adjust the plan so that it worked better with the building facade. And I think that, the more regular rhythm of the windows facing Church Street is a better solution.
Okay. It just, to me now it seems a little less interesting, a little more blah, but okay, sorry.
The next rendering, please. So this is the view from Church Street. Again, it's been updated with the coloration and the detail work at the top of the building. Next image, please. the plaza view. Again, this image was an image we presented last time. It's been updated with the new detail work. And then the final view. So this is a view, an updated rendered image of the Bloomfield Avenue side of the building. When we last presented this image, there was some discussion about buildings in the round and continuity of materials wrapping around the building. So we went back in and looked at ways that we could adjust the materiality of this side of the building to better reflect what was happening on the front facade of the Church Street facade of the building. And so we brought some of that metal paneling back to this side. And we adjusted the detailing of the stucco work to reflect the detailing of the masonry on the Church Street facade of the building, so that this, again, as viewed from Bloomfield Avenue, was treated in a way that was consistent with the building facing other directions on the site, and is more, I think, more consistent with the requirement, and rightfully as stated by the planning board members, with the building in the round. So now the building is looked at from all sides, and the level of detail and design is similar on all sides of the building. And this also reflects the current conditions of Bloomfield Avenue.
So I have a question for you. I think the, I don't know, the panels, if you want to call it, that are below each window, are those, I went and I looked at the samples. Are those the kind of reddish tone material that was in the samples?
No, the reddish tone material that was in the samples is up on the roof terrace of the building. In this instance, on the back, the panels below the windows are going to be the darker stucco color that was submitted.
Okay, and the gray thing on the left is metal,
That's
right?
correct. That's a metal. That's metal paneling that's similar to the paneling that's being used on Church Street.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Bruce, we've kind of walked through a number of your updates generally. I think that's really the affirmative testimony you've got, correct?
That's correct. Again, I would like to say that I believe that the improvements that the board recommended were definitely that. They were improvements to the project, and I think that they have helped advance the project in a way that I think is quite appropriate.
Great. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it to you.
All right, well, question. And while we're on this particular slide, if I could just ask for a little bit more clarity. On the westerly corner of the building, of the facade, it looks like there is a vertical shadow. I don't know whether it's a shadow or whether that's supposed to indicate a change in material. I see the shadow for the cornice line, but I'm talking about that piece that you can see that kind of extends from the cornice line shadow down to the tops of the tree.
Yeah, there is a change in material at that corner. The brick here of the west-facing facade ends at that point, and then there is a change of material to the stucco material, which continues around the other two sides of the building.
Is there a picture of that side of that western facade with the updated materials?
The western facade is all masonry as discussed previously. So the last time we spoke, that facade was all brick. And that facade was being treated to the same level of finish as the Church Street facade.
Right, but
So that hasn't changed.
do we have so going back to the, was there a drawing of that in the previous rendering?
There was. I think if you can go back to the first image in this rendering group. So that's that facade that you see there.
So I don't. So there's a cornice cap along that masonry. That's because it looks, when you look at this slide and you look at the next slide, it looks kind of flat.
Yeah, there is a cornice cap. It's just it'll be similar to the cap that you see at the front.
Can you go to the next slide, Janice? Wait a minute. Is that the next slide?
This is 2.
Slide 3. Yeah. Again, I don't really see a cap depicted there. And I just want to make sure that our drawings, because we go back, when there's questions, later on about details and finishes and issues, we go back to the drawings, we go back to the renderings, want to make sure that the renderings and the actual architectural drawings match up. And I can clearly see a cap on the front masonry building that's right on Church Street, but I don't see that. I don't see that jog, and it's probably just an error in the way that it's depicted, but I don't see it on these 2 slides, on slides 2 and slide 1 and slide 3. It looked flat.
Yeah.
It was my impression that there wasn't a cap on those, and now I hear your testimony. And
there will be a cap on all of at the top of all of the building elevations, and it will have a similar projection to the one on the front, and I believe the architectural plans show that in the submitted plan set.
Actually, Bruce, would it be on the updated plan set that we've got labeled here as, I think it was 844 when we started, in those color
Yes,
versions? Would that show there?
It does appear on the plan set.
And maybe we just pop over there, and Mr. Chairman, that might help you, to see it. Though I hear you on the rendering.
Well, Dennis, if we can just confirm that it's there, and we don't have to necessarily.
If you go to A9. Janice, it's on A9. It shows.
And while Janet does that, let me go back to that Bloomfield Avenue facade. And again, there's, and I may have just missed it because as I was looking at the drawing while you were talking, but there's am I correct in understanding that there's a brick detail that's showing in between the windows that
no, it's not going to be a brick detail. It's going to be a detail that simulates the detailing and the brickwork on the front of the building. It'll be done in a stucco system though.
I see. And is that also is it just on that 5-story side, or is it also underneath the side that has the gray cap for the top 2 floors?
Yeah, it's consistent across that entire facade.
Across the entire facade, okay.
Yes. You can see that on the elevation actually at the bottom of the page that Janice is on right now. So you can see that line work occurs, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
That line work occurs in between the windows across the entire facade. And if we can zoom in, you can see that the cap detail occurs all the way around the building. And I apologize that it didn't make it into that rendering. And that line that you see at the right of the page is the change in materials between the brick pier. Rather than just have a 4-inch veneer on the brick pier, we turned it so that it actually has some bulk, and then we started the stucco after that.
Okay.
And actually, Bruce, there's one other spot in here I just wanted to highlight for the board. There's also the 2 spots on the roof, both for the generator enclosure and then the top of the vestibule, where you've got
Yes.
a new item, a new
Yes.
a new facade there. So.
So I can clarify that a little bit. You can see up on the roof, and I think, Janice, if you can scroll down just a little bit, so that you can see the roof of the other building facade. But what we've done is we've reduced the projection to a higher projection to just that of the elevator shaft. That is being clad in the same brick as the Church Street facade. And then you can see that it steps down, and it steps down to the stair bulkhead height, which matches the height of the access vestibule to the roof terrace. And those are being clad in a wood material, a stained wood material, to be consistent with the roof terrace material that's going to be up on the roof. And that's what you see, the brown material that you see on those are the stair bulkheads clad in that wood in the lower image. And when you scroll up to the upper image, you'll see the access room on the roof terrace with the windows.
Can I ask a question, staying on this slide? I mean, that's the one thing about the project that seems kind of unsightly to me, is what we see on the roof here. It seems very large. And this may be kind of silly, but you know, looking at that picture, maybe you could make it match the tower in the church a little bit? Put a little pyramid cap on it or something? Just to make it look less, you know, glaringly different than everything else and mechanical looking. It's just a thought.
I have a question. When you talk about the stucco line work, is that stamped into the cement or stamped into the stucco?
It will be a scored stucco detail that'll be similar to the detail work of the front of the building.
Okay.
So it'll be part of the stucco system itself.
Okay. And I see. Okay. Thank you.
So you didn't respond to my suggestion that maybe you could make that mechanical feature on the top of the roof it aligned with some of those church features. There's the red roof down below of the church, then there's the tower of the church.
Mm-hmm. I would be concerned from a design perspective that it would be calling too much attention to that piece that's sticking up to put a turret or a roof form on it. It might be alien to the design of the building. And I also think that it may take away a little bit from the specialness of the top of the Sienna and the church spire itself.
Okay.
Yeah, I have that same kind of concern about the wood that you're putting up there. I mean, trying to just, you know, look at the building as a whole. There's no wood tones on this building except for what you see on the roof. And the idea, I guess, part of the hope, if we've got to have something that's projecting, if it's not going to be a feature, it needs to disappear as much as possible. And adding another element, another color, piece that is yet another departure from the materials that are used in the building. I just wonder how that's going to look. And I'm not so sure. The one thing that is clear from the 360 is that you can see the top of this building from 360 degrees, basically, as you go around the surrounding streets, which is what I suspected. So I don't know if that's the best solution for that. I understand it would look nice from the roof standpoint, but I don't know whether it's the best solution to kind of make it disappear from view.
Again, I think that from most of the street perspectives, you're only going to catch a little glimpse of this material. And I think that when I think about the penthouses of buildings and the rooftop areas of buildings, there's often a variety of finishes up there. There's in the old factory buildings, you'd have wooden water tanks and things like that. So
we don't want to go back to wooden water tanks. There's good ideas and there's bad ideas. So I mean, I'm kind of looking at what does it look like in the area, and you don't necessarily see a lot of that odd looking detail in the area. You see turrets, you see features, but you don't see these penthouse kind of things that you're talking about. You don't see water towers, and like I said, if are concerned about the structure on the top and that it sticks out from the top, it gives extra mass, extra height to a huge building already, and so my inclination would be to try and minimize it as much as possible. I mean, you've tried by reducing the size, but when you look at the comparison between what was there before and what's there now, size-wise, it's, from what you see, it's not that much of a change, to be quite honest. I don't know. I think that point needs a little bit more work, a little bit more consideration.
I would also add that you can definitely see the roof when you're driving from, down Bloomfield Avenue from Verona, because it's up the hill.
Oh yeah.
You can definitely see it. So it just seems it needs some work to make it either blend in with the existing building or do something to make it maybe attractive in some way. I don't know.
Okay, I would say that we could look at there's a variety of stain colors available. There's a variety of material colors available for that. We can look at something that probably has maybe a little bit more of a weathered look to it, something like that. I understand your concerns.
All right.
Do we have other questions on the board?
I do. Did the HPC weigh in on this at all, or is that their bailiwick?
This went to the HPC originally.
No, I mean the mechanicals on the roof.
The redesign.
Pardon me?
The redesign?
Yeah, is that something that they would be interested in and they have, seen and commented on?
They have not commented on the redesign, no.
And why would that be? Is that not the usual practice?
No.
No. The application went to the HPC before it came to you all. So.
But if there's significant changes, they don't look at it again?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't call this a significant change, but I think no, they see it once to see whether it's consistent with the architectural mandate of the redevelopment plan, which I think their report makes it pretty clear this was, and I think maybe it's actually a great segue to see. I know a number of the board's architectural consultants are on, and maybe they can give some guidance on this one.
So I do have a couple of questions. For staying on this rendering here, I understand that there's the cornice cap that projects out on this on the bottom of the page view here. Does that soldier course that we see in, you know, up near the band at the top of the cornice on Church Street, does that continue all the way around the building?
We haven't brought that around at this time. It really was meant to be a detail that was specific to the Church Street facade, to reflect the detail work of the neighboring building, the Wedgwood building.
I mean, it seems a little almost imbalanced to me, and I don't know how to describe this in a good architectural term, but you know, you've got the recessed and the, you know, projected metal panels that you've expanded, so it kind of looks like a wide cornice line to me on the metal panel side. Then it kind of continues to this very narrow cornice cap, and I was just wondering if there's another treatment that can be done in there, understanding that this is we're looking at mostly a stucco facade here. And, you know, as it wraps around to what I think is the western facade that turns to the brick, maybe there could be a different type of treatment there just to make the I guess, the cornice band feel a little similar weight.
Yeah.
Other questions I have, you can think about it. It seems like it's imbalanced, that's all. I like the idea of putting the electric room down on the first floor. One question that comes to mind is how do you protect that from a, you know, significant flooding event? You know, as we saw several buildings in Sandy, and I know that Church Street itself is flooded here in Montclair and in some of the more severe rain events. How do you protect that room?
We've had discussions with our MEP engineers, and they understand those conditions. And they will make sure that when we install the equipment that it's in a room that is appropriate for that type of equipment, and it'll be located where it's appropriate to be located. If we have to mount it above a certain, you know, if there's if we mount it on a dunnage or something like that and have pumps or whatever required for any kind of water controls, we can.
I would just suggest over-designing that piece of it, you know, given some of the things that we've seen lately, both in town and more, you know, Superstorm Sandy related. If Janice, would you mind going back to drawing A2? And what I wanted to ask is, understanding that the elevation of the garage is at plus 307, the elevation of the lobby is plus 303.8. How does a handicapped person go from those van accessible spaces 4 and 5 into the building? Because it looks to me like it's at a different elevation, or maybe I'm reading it incorrectly, Mr. Stevie.
And that was part of that discussion we had with the half-stop elevator. So a person who would be parking in that handicap van spot would then go into that vestibule in the back of the elevator. They would get into the elevator and go to the elevation of the lobby. So that would be the handicap route. A person
so
parking from the... I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay, a person that was parking just in general from the public would then exit through the door by the pay station and traverse down the walkway out to the Church Street.
Okay, so that vestibule does connect to the elevator then?
That's correct.
Okay, and you brought up another question in my mind. So the public has to, I guess, cross the garage, perhaps go to the pay station and then cross back over the travel lanes to access, say, the public plaza or Church Street?
Yes, there's a walkway that runs down along the building in that location. We have a site civil that can talk a little bit more about that and how that's going to work, but that's the pathway that people egressing the garage would use. in addition to the door exiting the back to the alleyway.
Okay. And on the roof, the is that screening that's around the HVAC equipment?
Yes, there's a louvered screen that wraps around the HVAC equipment and the generator.
Okay, so it's the one that's shown in the plan as well.
That's correct.
Okay. And then I think my last question, actually maybe I got two more. Well, last time I think we talked, Mr. Stevie, about looking at car headlights shining into the church property. Has there been anything done in this revision to try to remedy that?
Again, our site civil will have be able to address that a little bit more. They're going to talk about that. There will be a garage door that will be on the building itself that'll be closed at certain hours. But there'll be more discussion about that.
Okay, because if I read the parking management plan correctly, it sounded like the door would be open. Or it only would be closed really midnight to 5 a.m. if I remember correctly.
Midnight to 6.
So it seems like there's there you go, a bulk of time that it'd still be dark out, car headlights would be on and kind of shining,
right,
up into the church as it exited.
Yeah, so Mr. Brodak, I'll ask Mr. David to speak more specifically as to that, but I know he's looked at both the elevations there and also where those headlights would be vis-a-vis the church. And, I won't put any words in his mouth, but he's not concerned about there being any problem there, just based on, where those come out, where the grades are and everything else, but I'll leave that to him to testify in more particularity about.
Okay. And then I guess I was just we don't need to go to that exact slide, but on the rendering, it looked like it was still the small brick, I'll call it. If I don't know if that's 6-inch brick or a 9-inch brick instead of the 12-inch brick. And it looked like almost the soldier courses weren't captured in that rendering on Church Street. And I want to make sure I'm looking at that correctly. Is that still how it's being rendered?
Again, that's why we did the enlarged building elevation, so that we could show you the true brick dimensioning and things. The rendering techniques that the renderers use, they don't necessarily, they're not able to get, they use standard mappings. So they don't have mappings for the Norman brick. That's why I did that specific enlarged elevation, so you could see how that was going to work.
I think I would love to see it in the rendering. Like I get it, and I can see, there's a different detail in the rendering, but it really brings the package to life. Much like you colorize the plans that are on the screen here, it brings it to life more than just the black and white, even when it's enlarged. And I understand how it functionally goes together, but I think seeing it rendered, would be even better. So if you do produce some additional renderings, perhaps due to the changes up on the roof.
I do believe if you go to elevation A11 and A12, there's some detail, some level of detail shown on those with regard to the.
Again, if I zoom in, it looks like a recessed, horizontally laid brick.
Understood. That's why we did those enlarged elevations. We can try and add color to those elevations for you.
Okay. I think that's all I had. Thank you.
I just want to go back to the floor plans that we discussed in the affordable units, and just to clarify what we have on the last submission, the units that you have marked affordable are no longer going to be the affordable units. Is that correct? And you're going to give us a revised floor plans to show which units are affordable now?
Yes.
Will the And the difference between what you're going to supply us and what we're seeing here is not going to be in the layout of the various apartments. It's just going to be the designations.
That's correct. If you can go to the next floor, A4, please. So the bedroom that is the 2-bedroom unit above the amenity space that was on the lower floor, it's right in the center looking out onto the courtyard. That might become a 2-bedroom unit, and the 2-bedroom.
The 1060.
Yeah. So it'll be the nature. That'll be the nature of the adjustment that will be made for the affordable units. The affordable units will be now occupy the more standard 2-bedroom locations. And we'll provide you that drawing.
All right. Any other questions from the board?
I have just one more. Mr. Stevies, I believe that you said, and it's not shown here, that on A2, there's going to be a back door in the alleyway that will lead right to the Faubourg courtyard area. Is that correct?
Yes.
So it's almost like then this parking area becomes their parking, in a sense.
No, it's just another avenue to get out to that restaurant. And it was a discussion that was had between the owner of this development and the owner of the Bloomfield Avenue frontage.
But people can't walk from Bloomfield Avenue through the restaurant to get to this back door. You have to probably be a client of the restaurant, correct?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Other questions from the board?
Not necessarily a question, but I would at some point soon like to hear from Mr. Smith and Mr. Ross when we're done with board questions about their take on these, on the architectural changes.
All right. Do we have any questions from the public who is listening in, tuned in, of this witness concerning what he's testified about so far?
Okay, I unmuted the public. So if you have any comments.
Questions.
Or questions, I'm sorry, questions, now's the time to make them. Anybody have questions?
Doesn't appear.
We have a call-in user, hold on.
Okay.
Hello, do you have a question for Mr. Stevie?
Yes, I do. I have one for Mr. Stevie or Mr. McLeod. This is William Scott.
Okay.
I just go back and touch bases or ask a question about the decision to bring the affordable units more in line with the market rate units. And I was wondering if, I believe it was Mr. McLeod indicated he was using or considering the uniform housing affordable controls. And was that what was used to make his decision to make the changes in the affordable units opposed to the town's design guidelines for the affordable units?
Yeah, so I don't want to get into a treatise on UHAC versus municipal regulation or anything like that, and because we'll be here all night. But very simply, UHAC governs how the units get allocated with regard to income distribution and minimum building size, and that's what the developer had provided. What we've heard from the board is they really wanted to see those 2-bedroom units and 3-bedroom units be 2-bath and be a little larger to be more comparable with the market rate units that were there. And that's what the developers changes were motivated to provide. The prior version of this complied with UHAC just as much as the new one does. This one, we've heard the concerns from the board with regard to what the allocations were, how and where those units are allocated, and that's really what drove the interest to make the changes.
Okay, and I appreciate your explanation because, you know, I did take a look at the UAC guidelines, and their recommendations was that the affordable units be identical to the market rate units, which their wording seems to be a little bit more specific to the specific in the town ordinance. And as the co-chair of the Housing Commission, we had some discussion about the wording of the town's definition for the affordable units compared to the market rate units. So we wanted to get an understanding a little bit more specific, and I think we, from a Housing Commission standpoint, we're going to go back and tighten up or make a recommendation for our wording in our ordinance that comes more in line with the UAC recommendation. So because in the last couple of applications, this has been an issue with the square footage for the affordable units, and there has been adjustments from the developers, but I think that a little tightening of the town's ordinance would probably make this a less of an issue moving forward. And I appreciate your response. Thank you.
Yeah, no. Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Hey, Dennis, in the question and answer, there's Mr. Greenbaum has a question.
Hold on.
Or maybe he put it in the chat room.
It's not in the chat room. Mr. Greenbaum just says, I have a question.
Okay.
I don't see the question. Mr. Greenbaum, you can, if you put it in your chat message, I can see that.
It doesn't look like Mr. Greenbaum has his audio connected to the meeting.
No.
I don't see any icons. So he may be unable to communicate, you know, through audio. So it might be, you know, good if he could connect in his audio, whether, you know, through the phone or, you know, through a headset or whatnot.
Okay. Hold on. Let me see what this says. I was alerted by the media that the planning board is not, I can't, Dave, it ends there. I don't know what your question is, David. If you use the chat, my understanding is that the HPC has requested the application to return to review any modifications to the design, including citations made by the HPC in the form of recommendations. Okay, well, we didn't provide the HPC report to the planning board. So I know the planning board has a copy of the HPC report, which I'm sure perhaps Barton, Ross, or Ira Smith can address, or I could try and pull it up. But that was not part of, I don't think, Mr. Stevie's presentation. Are there any other questions from the public? Okay.
Anything, Janice?
Nope, no other questions.
I have one last question, if it's okay.
Go ahead, Robin.
Okay, thank you. I just had a question. In our packet that came to our homes, you know, that we get every week, there was a very large presentation here. It says examples of metal panels used in building compositions. All these examples, I guess, of Marchetto, Higgins, Stevie buildings. So I was just wondering, so Mr. Stevie, these are buildings that you have designed?
Those are buildings that use metal paneling. At the last meeting that we had, the board had requested that we provide the locations, addresses, and examples of buildings that they could go visit that use metal panels in the architectural design.
So in any of these buildings that we saw tonight, were basically, dark gray. Are there, these are colors. Sent us that might shed a better light on what you're using here on Church Street.
I'm sorry, I can't hear what you're saying.
Are any of these samples in what was given to us give us a picture of what this buildings look like? Because what you tonight was basically gray and dark gray. These have more color in them, these samples. So I was just curious.
Again, the purpose of those were to give the board an opportunity to review projects that had metal paneling, and they could go and visit those.
Oh, I see. Sorry. Okay. Blocks are beautiful. Those are nice.
It was also Mr. Stevie's kind of humble brag, but we'll leave it there.
That's those Metropolitan Lofts in Morristown are really nice. Thank you.
All right, if we don't have any other questions, we can proceed to the next witness.
Great, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Sonia, or Janice, Sonia David will be the next one up. If you can enable him.
I made him a panelist.
Great, thanks. And he'll be working off what you've got on there is, I think it's tab 6. If I'm looking at your PDF right, yep. the Langen exhibit. So,
Chairwin, just before we jump into engineering, did you want to maybe stay in architecture with Mr. Smith and Mr. Ross, or do you want to save that for after site civil?
I was thinking about trying to get through the applicant's witnesses,
okay,
and come back to the architectural issues because we're going to finish with them clearly. So, let's see if we can get to his witnesses, and we can come back.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Sounds good.
Just say, can everybody mute yourselves? I think people are turning pages. Can you please mute yourselves because we can't hear?
There we go. All right, so Sony, I don't see you yet, but I'm guessing you're here.
Yes, I can see myself up on the screen.
Oh, there
now.
you are. Hi.
Hey.
So, Mr. Chairman, we'd offer Sony David as a professional engineer here from Langen Engineering and Environmental Services Incorporated to serve as an expert witness in the area of civil engineering and site design. You want to hear his bona fides, or?
Well, has he testified before before?
I actually don't know.
So I know we've had many engineering individuals. I recognize the name, but the firm, but I don't recognize the individual.
I have not testified before Montclair.
All right. Well, would you just, please, give us a basis then to allow you to testify as an expert?
Certainly.
Mr. David, before we do that, may I ask you to raise your right hand, please?
Sure.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Would you please state your full name and business affiliation for the record?
Sure. My first name is Sony, S-O-N-Y. My last name is David, D-A-V-I-D. And I work currently at Langen Engineering and Environmental Services.
And Sony, can you give the board the benefit of your experience, education, and any licensures that you may hold?
Sure. So I have a bachelor's of civil engineering from New Jersey Institute of Technology. I have a master's of civil engineering from Stevens Institute of Technology. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey, and I've testified before dozens of other boards in the state of New Jersey.
And your licenses are current?
That's correct.
Good.
Okay,
Chairman,
we'll accept the resignation.
Thank you.
So, Sony, you're the site civil engineer for the project here at 65 Church. If you could run through a brief overview of the existing conditions, those that are proposed, and really with a focus on the issues related to site access, stormwater management, and also the utilities, that'd be great.
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you. So I know Bruce touched upon this at the last meeting, and I'll just quickly go through the existing conditions. The plan that you have here in front of you is drawing VL 101, which is the Alta NSPS land title survey. The site is located at block 2208, lot 17, and is 0.84 acres in size, currently functioning as an at-grade parking lot with 102 existing parking spaces. Just to orient everyone, north is generally facing towards the top of the sheet on all the plans that I'm going to be discussing through tonight. The project site is bound by Church Street to the south, commercial buildings to the north and east, and the Unitarian Church to the west. And the site is generally sloped towards Church Street, with existing elevations ranging from elevation 306 in the northern portion of the site, which is top of the sheet, all the way down to elevation 301 on the southern portion of the site towards Church Street, with pretty mild slopes, generally 1% to 2% slopes. Next slide, please. So this next plan is the drawing CS101, the site plan, which was submitted as part of the package. You'll notice that there are highlighted portions of this plan, just clearly denoting the areas where the landscaping is shown in green, just to highlight those areas throughout the entire project. Now, the proposed improvements include a new 5-story mixed-use building with 74 residential units, 3,936 square feet of ground floor retail space, and 112 structured parking spaces. The improvements also include an at-grade plaza space with new landscaping and hardscaping areas. As I mentioned, as shown in green, there are landscaped areas throughout the plaza area and along the southern facade of the building, as well as surrounding the perimeter of the entire building as in the property. I also wanted to discuss the gates that were raised during Bruce's testimony at the entrance to the alleyways. They're really the eastern and western entrances on either side of the building that has a 5-foot corridor around the perimeter of the building. As you've certainly suggested, we will incorporate a metal gate at both of these alley entrances to accommodate some type of security at those two points. I also wanted to mention, based on our meeting with the HPC, and in order to incorporate some of their comments, we do plan on replacing the deciduous shrubs along the northwestern facade. That's the upper left-hand portion of this plan. Along that edge that's currently facing the church, we're going to replace the deciduous shrubs, which is a smaller, lower-level planting, with arborvitaes, which are 12 to 15 feet high, providing a nicer view for the church along that facade. And then moving on to the site access is currently provided through a 2-way driveway off of Church Street and provides access to the structured parking garage, as well as a loading space at the end of the driveway. And currently, based on discussions with the board in regards to the headlights coming out of the garage, I just wanted to address that as well. There is a slight difference in grade, where the proposed grades are slightly lower than the church property by about 6 to 12 inches. I also wanted to let the board know that when we review this area, the garage entrance is directly facing the classrooms that are a part of the church and not the main sanctuary. And so the classrooms will be largely unimpacted by any car headlights, just really due to the timing of the use of the classroom space. And so that's what I would offer, is the grade change elevation as well as the specific use that's occurring directly across from the entrances. And in addition to the structured parking, moving out towards the street side, there are 4 on-street parking spaces. These have been modified as requested by the engineer's comment letter. And so what we've done is redistribute the parking space lengths so that there's 22 feet long interior parking spaces, and the 2 exterior ones are 18 feet long, as are currently shown on the plan. And adjacent to this parallel parking spaces, there's also a pickup drop-off zone fronting the retail space for rideshare, FedEx, and smaller deliveries. And the improvements along this street side also include new street trees, which the final tree selection will be coordinated and approved by the township arborist, as well as new site lighting along this street side as well. And at the last hearing, there was also a comment about the site lighting within the interior of the plaza area. There are 2 pedestrian level lights, which are 15 feet high. And the question came about as how was their relationship to the second floor residential level. The pedestrian lights within this area are down lights, so they basically have downward facing lights with the LED lamp completely within the fixture. And so, you know, if from your vantage point on the second floor level, you would not be able to see any source of light due to the downward facing lights, as well as the fact that the fixture and that LED lamp is within the fixture in its entirety. I also wanted to let you guys know that there is a bicycle rack included in the plaza space, which is located at the southwest corner of the plaza near the Church Street sidewalk. It's within the plaza area, just to the left of where you have the arrow right now, correct. And this was originally shifted from where the original plans had it, which was in the right-of-way along the streetscape, which was along those parallel parking spaces. So we shifted it into the plaza area. Next slide, please. So this next slide is drawing CU 101, which is the utility plan, and in the background it also shows the stormwater management plan. And so the existing stormwater runoff is currently conveyed into the existing catch basins from the parking lot and flows via piping into the existing 48-inch stormwater pipe in Church Street. The proposed development does not increase the impervious coverage from the existing conditions and maintains the same drainage patterns through a new series of inlets and stormwater conveyance piping, and will ultimately be conveyed to the same 48-inch line on Church Street. And I just wanted to note also that the stormwater design complies with both the township and NJDEP stormwater regulations. And in relationship to the proposed utilities, we have a proposed sanitary sewer connecting to the existing 8-inch sewer in the right-of-way, a 4 and an 8-inch water service connecting to the existing 12-inch in Church Street, and the proposed telecom, electric, and gas services also connect to the existing utilities fronting in Church Street, all which will be underground services. Next slide, please. So this last plan is drawing CS 102, it's called the circulation plan. We have made updates to this plan. You'll notice that there's 2 insets on this plan. The one to the left is what was provided as part of the package, showing the circulation of a loading truck, a 30-foot long box truck, backing up into the loading space at the end of the drive aisle. And then on the right-hand side is a passenger car circulation, showing a passenger car movement entering through the driveway and then into the garage. Just to provide a little more clarity on the truck circulation and loading operations, ultimately, like I mentioned, a 30-foot box truck is what's sized for the purpose of loading and unloading operations in this space. It would be backing down the drive aisle into that loading space. Loading operations will be coordinated with the property manager to be scheduled at specific times. And it's also anticipated that a flagman will be provided to manage traffic within the garage while the truck is backing down into the loading space. And you notice that it does back down the one-way going towards the garage and only crosses at that last portion where the flagman will have control of the movements coming out of the garage. And that's my last slide.
All right. And so Sony, in your professional opinion, everything you've designed here meets all the applicable regulations under the redevelopment plan, anything under the Montclair standards that need to be met, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And was there anything in, actually, I'll scratch that and I'll actually just turn it over to the chairman for questions, as I think that'll be more useful than me rambling.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess maybe this is not the right person, but I think as a condition of approval, if it gets that far, I'd like to see where the utilities are in the amenity spaces. I don't think that's shown on any of the plans, where the lighting, the electric, the water. Is it your intent to include that at some date?
Yeah, normally, so that's basically the site electrification plan showing the lighting conduits between light poles and things like that. That normally gets addressed as part of the MEP consultants package, where they would be showing that. But you're certainly correct; it would be all underground, and that would be developed during the construction document phase.
Well, all I'm saying is at some point we would like to see that on a plan. It would show where the lighting, where the electric, where the water would be in the amenity spaces. And if there's gas lines, I don't know. Whatever your utilities are going to be in that space should be shown, and that's not currently shown.
That's correct. The only thing that would be within that space would be electric. And as I mentioned, that would be prepared by the MEP consultant. And if it's necessary, we can, I guess, work with the architect and MEP to try to find and see if that can be provided as well. The plan that I did have up showing the utility plan did show all the other underground electric, gas, water, sanitary services that would be servicing the building.
I thought there was also water that was supposed to be at the amenity sites. The as I understand it, are on the roof, first floor. There's a couple of amenity spaces.
Let me make sure I understand your question, Ms. Laughlin. What Mr. David essentially testifies about is when you bring the utilities into the building, that's what his utility plan is showing. What you're looking for are really the internal fit outs.
Yes, yeah.
And like where electrical outlets are going to go and where the water piping is going to run and where the gas lines are going to run in the building.
Not really. I just want to, there's amenity space there. I just want to make sure that in the amenity space where you have some greenery around there, you have some water that will be, we just want to know where that stuff is. That's all.
Okay. No, I just wanted to make sure I understood the question.
Yeah.
Okay. Sony, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I think I misunderstood. I was answering it about the plaza space, but I clearly understand. Now you're talking about the upper level amenity deck.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah. And I know that level of specificity is usually something that's done during the actual, the construction plans themselves. It's not something that's typically shown, at least in my experience on plans like these. But what we could do is ask the board, I guess, if you wanted to, we'll represent that there's going to be, a water spigot there to make sure that the greenery is properly, properly watered. There's really not much more we can do than confirm that we're going to do what we have to do what we're obligated to do.
No, I don't want to belabor this. I just want to make sure that
okay,
we're supposed to see with that we see.
Right. Yep. Understood.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Mr. David, just one question. So you mentioned that the way that the vehicles will navigate the drive aisle should not cast light or shadows into the school next door, if I followed correctly. And you were saying that was based on the time and type of use, or just want to make sure I'm following and thinking through any way to mitigate what light might spill over into that school?
Sure. So ultimately, it would be during the time that the classrooms would be in use. Like I mentioned, there is a small difference in grade. I would say, honestly speaking, I don't think that would have a significant impact in terms of, the headlights being completely obstructed from the view of the classrooms. Just because normally headlights are placed anywhere from about 3 feet, a little bit higher than that, above grade. But that being said, my thought process was at the time that the classes would be in use versus a car coming out at an off hour, it would be pretty minimal impacts in terms of those times overlapping, right? In terms of having a use of the classroom space, I guess after hours or during a nighttime event or something like that.
Yeah, and I think there's young kids in the school next door, and it's, a bit of preschool. So it goes a little bit longer, for working parents as well. So I know, maybe it's just 2 to 4 months out of the year where it's getting dark early, like now, where you would have lights, coming through 4:15, 4:30 even. And I think it's around 5:30 or 6 that, the school is kind of fully dismissed. So I was just wondering, I mean, the space is quite tight, so I'm not sure. I was racking my mind to think what might even be able to be put in place, but could you provide any ideas of how to mitigate any light spillover? Also, it looks like much of it is pointed directly towards the back. It's really just the turn where you would have that light spilling, if I'm reading this correctly.
Yeah, that's correct. And you are right. It is pretty tight space, but if we absolutely needed to do something, I think, it is possible to put perhaps like a board-on-board fencing or something like that within a stretch along that edge, if it really was a concern to the board, like you're mentioning, to kind of mitigate any kind of light spillage onto the adjacent property within that specific area, we could do that.
Sony, I think there's also one other thing to consider there too. There's the driveway for the church is right in that same area, and I think all the windows are also a bit above grade there too. So I don't really know. I think you're probably looking at there's a larger different distance there.
Okay.
So you can see it actually on the plan you've got right here. Just in what I'm seeing, it looks like you're going to have a bit of distance off there, and then you've also got those classrooms being even a little bit a bit above grade. So you're probably not looking at them being 3 foot on. You might even look at these headlights would probably come below those lights. I don't know. It's just my layman thoughts there.
Sure. No, and I can understand. I can understand the board's concerns because if you're looking out the window, even if it's slightly down further, you could potentially have the glare, I think, of the actual the source of the light emitting onto that person. I mean, again, it's I don't think it would be a significant issue like you mentioned, but there would be certain times of the year where I can imagine that could potentially be a concern like you just raised. And if that would help by having some type of obstruction within that area, it would be tight, but it is possible to probably fit a board-on-board type of fence or something like that that would obstruct a portion or that area, directly across from where the entrance is towards the church.
Yeah, I think that would help. And it's a good point that it's a little odd with the elevation because some of the classrooms are lower, and so the windows are, at or lower than surface level or ground level even. And then there's also, as mentioned, some of the stained glass, I think, or maybe it's just regular glass, but for the church is a little higher. So again, I agree that most of the time it won't matter, but even if the church has a concert at night, you don't really want these kind of lights flashing across every 10 minutes. And I think the building that could be used, any time of day. So you'll probably have a pretty steady cadence of traffic there. So yeah, it's just what I was saying. If there's really anything that could be put in there, that really would be great.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair comment. We could look at that. Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions?
That was, echoing Yeah, it was echoing my concern was really the sanctuary. I figured that, the classroom, and I think Mr. Gilmer clearly has more personal or some sort of experience with this site than I do. But, I figured classrooms probably have blinds, whereas sanctuaries almost never have a blind on the window. And I would think, in the middle of a service or something like that, it'd just be very distracting to have lights flashing periodically in the middle of that. So I thank you for taking a look at that. I did have just a couple of questions here. So I assume, Mr. David, that 30-foot box truck is consistent with a moving van, typical moving van?
Correct. I would say it's probably, it's probably a little bit larger than a typical moving van, but yeah.
Okay, so that'll accommodate most folks that would be moving in and out of the building.
That's correct.
Okay. And in terms of vehicles exiting the site, and I know you didn't put this on the presentation tonight, but looking in some of the plans that you have, there's some parked cars that are sorry, I should say parking spaces on Church Street in front of the building. Do you see them as will somebody's vision be impeded by those parked cars when they're trying to exit this facility?
So when we did provide a site triangle, and so that there is some areas that are slightly impeded, but as typical to an urban environment where you have a scenario like this occurring in most areas, rather than really stopping at the stop bar, they're going to slowly work their way out to be able to have a little bit better of a vantage point. Not enough to obviously impact a car coming towards them, but enough for them to be able to see and have a clear sight distance as they edge forward and try to make that movement.
Okay, so there will be some, interruption of the vision, but you think it can be handled by most drivers understanding how to navigate that?
Correct, yes. And the vast majority of the folks who are going to be in this space is going to be, aside from the retail folks, people who are familiar with this space and familiar with this area as well. So.
Okay. And then I had one question on your lighting plan. It looked like, as far as I understand our ordinances, is that you need a half-a-foot candle in travel lanes and things of that nature, but it looked like it was, the lighting was a little slim getting over towards the property boundary with the church. I was wondering if there's something that you could do to address that or what your opinion was on that. And I mean, certainly I don't want lights spilling onto the property next door unnecessarily, but still at the same time would like, the drive aisles to be properly lit.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's really that balance between, properly lighting the plans while also just being respectful of the boundaries so that you're not putting a lot of light throw on the adjacent properties. The light levels that we do have shown do meet the minimum requirements and also I think do a pretty good job of balancing the light throw so that there's no really one area that's overly lit, which is also a problem when you have, very, very lit areas and then other areas that are a bit more dimly lit. And so through the use of bollards, pedestrian lights, and also building mounted lights, I think it does a pretty good job of distributing the lights pretty evenly across that whole space while meeting the minimum standards.
And is that minimum standard half-foot candle?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, it just doesn't look like it quite meets it, at least on that exit lane that's coming out, as far as I can tell from the concentric circles. That was really my concern, is it almost looks like that whole lane doesn't fall within that boundary.
We could take a closer look at that. I think that's likely because of other existing lights that probably aren't modeled. As it starts getting into the roadway and street lighting, that's normally what will happen, where we'll take a closer look at that and see what lighting existing lights are available that would certainly provide that kind of extra lighting that would be necessary beyond the proposed lighting that's currently shown. We could definitely double check that.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the board?
Maybe I do have one more. At some point, I would like you, Mr. David, to address the engineer's comments, at least to the extent they're covered in your testimony, your portion of the testimony.
Okay, yes. Is there a specific comment letter? I know we've received a number of ones.
Yeah, do
You know, there's
Sonny, we
one
we
dated
can,
September 28th.
right, yeah, we can walk through Mr. Battaglia's what's his letter, right? Yeah, Mr. Battaglia's letter.
Yes, it seems to cover, you know, a lot of different areas, and you know, I don't want it to be missed, you know, since we have different witnesses covering different topics.
No, understood. So I know a lot of this has been addressed and will be addressed by the various parts, and I'm just cruising through to see if there's anything in here where Mr. David's particular testimony would be worth touching on these, because you're right, others are, or others have you know, touched on parts of this. You know, so for instance, comment 11 in Mr. Battaglia's note discusses exactly the issue of the loading area that Mr. David's testified to.
I can jump in and assist you in finding things to answer. I did have some questions on the drainage system. I've heard a lot of talk about parking, but I haven't heard anything about drainage. Yes, I have been here the whole time listening.
Let's talk about drainage then. Sony, can you talk about a bit about the drainage system and particularly, you know, how it functions? I know, you know, Mr. Battaglia had raised some questions about locations of manholes, how things tied in, that kind of stuff. If you can kind of walk through that.
Correct. So I'll just generally touch upon the existing and the proposed conditions real quick. I guess the existing conditions right now, currently all feed flow to existing catch basins that capture the water closer to the Church Street side, and ultimately discharge into the existing 48-inch storm sewer in Church Street. And so in the proposed conditions, what we're doing is basically maintaining those same drainage patterns, allowing the water to be collected closer towards Church Street side through the inlets that are currently within the plaza spaces, as well as a series of smaller area drains around the perimeter and the alleyways, all of which would tie back into the existing system and tie back into the existing 48-inch pipe. I think one of the comments mentioned in the letter was an invert elevation that was incorrectly shown, and that was correct. It does need to be adjusted to provide the adequate cover that's necessary, and we have the ability to do that. I also wanted to note that the conveyance system adequately accommodates the proposed conditions because we are maintaining the same pervious coverage from the existing conditions. We're maintaining the same peak flows. And so because there's no increase, there's no detention required. Because there's no increase of impervious coverage, there's no water quality required here. And we're in a PA1 zone, and so no recharge is required. And therefore, we meet the intent of Montclair's stormwater regulations as well as the NJDP stormwater rules.
I believe, I'm trying to look through my comment letter since it's been 2 months since I wrote it. I believe there was a comment about being able to access and maintain the system based on all of the landscaping that is proposed along the perimeter of this building. I was concerned with being able to actually get to those catch basins that you've got proposed. I think it's sheet number 20, comment number 27, actually.
Yeah, so I would say on the southern edge there is some landscaping that's probably a little bit larger to be able to get through, like you mentioned, and that's really along the western facade that's facing the church. But in all other areas, it's really going to be a low level ground cover that can be accommodated around, I guess, to provide pervious coverage, but still access to these areas. The intent obviously is to maintain them as needed. There will be a very, very small amount of flow that's going to be captured by this. It's really a belt and suspender system, but I mean, you're certainly right. I mean, in order to maintain it, you need access, and really the means to get access would be going around from the easternmost entrance and working your way around, because access would be difficult on the westernmost
On the
side.
left side, yeah.
You are right. Yep.
Yeah, specifically because there will be so little flow, I'm concerned that the catch basins will end up getting, covered with leaves and mulch and whatnot, and end up not functioning at all, because there won't be any cleansing velocity from any actual runoff. So
Agreed.
something to be concerned about.
No, and you're right, and we do have a maintenance schedule that we will be providing to the owner as well. The intention is to have this inspected quarterly, just to be able to at least understand and see what the function is. And you're right, if it is unmaintained and unused, there is a greater degree of having this being obstructed, through leaves and other things like that within these spaces.
Very good.
Was there anything else in particular you wanted him to hit, Mr. Battaglia? I think most of the rest of this was
a lot of it was already covered in other testimony.
That's what I thought. Yep.
Okay. I know I had noted a typo in the utility assessment report, which I'm sure you guys will fix. Just quickly scrolling through, I think most everything else was covered already.
Okay, great.
It might behoove you to just do a point-by-point response.
Yeah, and I know we typically do that as part of res compliance, because
of course, yeah.
Obviously your report becomes part of the magic. So
it is magical, yes. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Battaglia. Mr. Chairman, I guess back to you.
Sorry, I'm talking and I thought I was unmuted. Do we have any other questions from the board?
Chair Nguyen, this is Mike Dannemiller. Before you go to the public, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. David did a great job. He covered most of the questions I would have asked. The curbside furniture that's being coordinated, the bike rack, he located it. Thank you. The truck turning template, I was glad to see those. I did have a question about the function. Moving trucks, when they back up to the building, usually they have a big ramp at the back of them. I see that the truck backs up right to where a door is, but when a truck's tucked up against the building, how's that going to work? Like a U-Haul style kind of van usually has a ramp that sticks out the back a little bit. How will that work without impeding the access driveway?
That's a really good question. If you could just pull up the next plan and maybe zoom into the loading area, we can kind of see that a little bit clearer. So if you could zoom into just that loading space a little bit closer, it could allow us to see that. So what we've done basically is provided 2 bollards to address this specific issue, because I mean it is a legitimate one. We have about 6 feet of space from the building facade to where the truck would back up into, leaving room for a ramp like you're talking about, or for room for people just to be able to unload while still protected along the back edge, to have that room to actually have that occur.
Okay. And Chair, one of the things we had pointed out here, there had been a tighter radius. I see that a slightly larger radius was provided. Janice, if you just keep this exactly where it is, you see the passenger car on the right side of the screen. It just makes it. It's tight, but it absolutely covers. So it used to be a 5-foot radius. Now I think it's labeled as 8, but it does address that concern. So thanks for doing that. It makes it. It's just there's no cushion.
Yeah, and I will note that this is also, so this passenger car that we model in AASHTO is not just really a car. I would say it's probably the size of of an Escalade in terms of how large and big this movement is. So you are totally right. It is a tight turning radius, but just consider that as well.
Yeah, it works. It's not the little RX-7 that you have in all your.
Exactly.
All right, do we have any other questions from the board side? All right, do we have any questions from the public witnesses' testimony concerning what he's talked about this evening?
Will someone else be speaking to trip generation? I assume that's not for this witness.
Yes, that'll be Mr. Lothian.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I've unmuted the public. So if anybody has any questions?
Speak up, send Janice a message, let us know. All quiet?
If I don't hear any, there's nothing from the public here.
All right.
You can also send me a message on the chat if you can't hook up your audio. I can take a message from chat.
Right.
Or the Q&A function. I don't see anything.
All right. Well, what I would like to do here is to take a break. And, if somebody has a question, we can address it when we come back if they need to send it, if they can't speak. And so with that, let's take a 5-minute break, guys.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. See you in a bit.
Okay, thank you. back online.
There he is.
And Janice, once you have, once you're back recording, let me know.
Yeah, we're recording.
All right, very good. Counselor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our last witness of the evening is Mr. Alan Lothian, who is a traffic engineer with Langen. Alan, have you testified before Montclair before?
I do not believe I have.
All right, so same thing. I'll turn you over to Mr. Neese to swear you in, and then we'll do your bona fides.
Will do.
Arthur? Oh. I think we're waiting for Arthur.
Oh.
Arthur?
There he is.
Hey there. We need you to swear in Mr. Lothian, Arthur.
We need him. There he goes.
Sir, do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Would you please state your full name and business affiliation for the record?
Alan Lothian, AlanLothian, and I'm employed by Langen Engineering and Environmental Services. And Cam, do you want me to just go through?
Yeah, would you mind just
Yep.
give the board your education, your experience, and any licenses you may hold?
Yep, no problem. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering from Rutgers, a Master's of Science in Transportation from NJIT. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey in good standing, and I have testified before dozens of boards throughout the state of New Jersey.
Any highlights you want to make for the board or no?
Highlights.
Favorite towns?
We won't put you on the spot like that.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
All right, Mr. Chairman, we'd ask that Mr. Lothian be accepted as an expert in traffic engineering.
We'll accept him.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lothian, you've put together a traffic and parking statement that's been revised through, I believe it's October 29th, 2020, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Could you give the board the benefit of your analysis and findings with regard to the proposed traffic and parking for this property?
I will, and given the late hour, I'll try to make it as brief as possible. I have two topics to hit. One is the trip generation, the other is the parking supply. So first with the trip generation, the proposed development is anticipated to generate less trips than the current parking lot use when fully utilized. Looking at the PM, which is the more conservative time period, it's 23 less trips during the PM peak hour, and that's relatively significant when looking at that reduction. It's also I want to make it clear that it's looking at it as a conservative trip generation. We did not take any credit for any mass transit or pedestrian usage. We didn't take any credit for pass-by trips for the retail. We didn't take any credit for internal capture trips or the fact that it's a walkable CBD where both residents and customers of the retail would be walking the streets as opposed to using their vehicles. So that comparison is looking at it as though it's all vehicular trips coming to and from the site during that PM peak hour.
just to give a couple of ideas, the census data suggests that over 30% of Montclair residents use some type of mass transportation and/or walk to work or other uses within the area. So, as such, we don't anticipate that the traffic generated by this site will cause a discernible difference in trip generation and activity in this general area. One other thing I would like to note, NB5 had one concern that I don't believe was addressed in one of their comment letters, and that was taking the existing one-way driveways. Currently, there's a one-way in, one-way out for the parking lot. We are combining those driveways, and we're going to have an enter and exit driveway. A typical driveway that intersects a major street, and there is no discernible difference analysis-wise. I did a sensitivity analysis, just taking what the site would generate and projecting a high volume of traffic I would consider for Church Street, and that would be I assumed, I think, 300 cars in each direction, which during the peak hour I don't believe there would be that many, and we're looking at levels of service of B for the exiting movement out of the driveway, whether it's a combined driveway or a separate one-way exit out. And as you saw from the testimony previous by Mr. David, the driveway has been designed to accommodate the turning movements for the design vehicles. So I will move now to the parking aspect. So we meet the parking requirements based on the redevelopment plan, which requires this site to have a total of 112 parking spaces, 20 spaces purely dedicated to the public, 82 spaces dedicated, or 82 spaces for the residential component, and then 10 spaces for the retail component. The redevelopment plan has its own shared parking analysis built into it to identify the minimum number of spaces required at any given time for the project, and the critical time period based on the if you go there, the critical time period is the weekday from 6 p.m. to 12 a.m., where there's a total of 90 spaces required. That's looking just at the residential and the retail. That takes the 20 public spaces out of the equation. So that identifies that there would be two spaces available, two additional spaces available for the public use during that time. So since there would need to be 82 spaces, which is the requirement for the residential, and 8 spaces for the retail, we went over and above and looked at a shared parking analysis for the retail and the residential to see if there was the ability to provide additional spaces on that ground floor level for the public. So on that ground floor level, there are 20 spaces for the public, 10 spaces for the retail, and then 6 spaces for the residential component. And what we found based on the additional shared parking analysis using ULI shared parking, the latest version, we found that there would be the ability to provide those 6 spaces to the public during the course of the day. That's not to say that the residents can't park there, but those spaces could be available and likely would be available during the course of the business day from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And they will be signed as such that they are available for use by the public between those hours, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. So given all that and the analysis we did, the ability to provide those additional 6 spaces during the course of the day so that people can use them to go down to the, down to the CBD and wherever they may travel in the downtown area. We anticipate that the proposed parking supply will not only adequately accommodate the anticipated demand, but for the development, but it meets the intent of the redevelopment plan and provides as much additional spaces for the public as possible. And that is the conclusion of my direct. Open to any questions you may have.
Well, there you go. And
Questions from the board?
I have a question. So what are the hours that the public can use this parking lot?
What was identified in the parking management plan is that the public access to the garage will be restricted from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. So from 6 a.m. to 12 a.m., the lot will be open to the public. And that's to accommodate any number of uses in the downtown area.
So basically, there's no overnight parking from 12 a.m. until 6 a.m.
Yes, and the decision was that's for the safety of the residents. To restrict it to residents only during those time periods.
And I'm sorry, but did your analysis take into account on Friday and Saturday night that the public will want to use this until 12 a.m.? I was reading some cutoffs at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., excuse me, and I didn't quite get it.
No, the cutoffs are for those 6 additional residential spaces, and that's at 6 p.m. So that the residents, when they're coming home, if they need those spaces, they can utilize those spaces. So those 6 additional spaces will be signed for use by the public from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m.
But the 20 spaces allocated to the public are available every day until 12 a.m.
6 a.m. to 12 a.m. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Other questions?
Just out of curiosity, how utilized is the existing parking lot compared to, full utilization as you have in your report?
I'm not sure how utilized it is at the moment, but historically it's been quite active. So when I say full utilized, it's active as a full operational lot, which it has been for the recent past.
So how do you feel the public will anticipate or kind of sense the traffic coming in and out of the development compared to what the lot currently experiences, not fully utilized, but what it currently experiences?
Again, I looked at it as conservative as possible. If we take in all those credits and that I described with respect to mass transit, walking, interaction between the uses, the actual you will not notice a difference of what's happening today versus in the future when the project is built.
Thank you.
I have another question. Okay. Will there be any signage like that will show people that there are X number of spots available to the public?
That's really an operational question, but my understanding is there will be something put in place in the PMP, the parking management plan, where the public will be identified if there are no spaces left in the lot.
Who's going to address the parking management plan? Is that you?
That is not me. That's an operational question.
Yeah.
Somebody else will. There'll be testimony about that.
Well, if there are direct questions on it, Ms. Lockman, I think what we can do is ask a member of the ownership team if they can step up and answer some of those, because it will be really an operational, here's our experience, here's how we've managed it in the past, and here's what the plan says.
Because basically you don't have a parking management company yet?
Well, basically the operator, hasn't identified a parking management company that they're going to say is going to handle this. Given the size of the garage, frankly, it may be something, I just don't know. I don't know if there's an external operator, internal operator, the whole nine.
My understanding is that there will be an on-site manager that will put signage up should the lot be full.
Yep.
Yeah, sandwich board thing, but there's no electronic count of how many spaces might be available. That's okay.
Yeah.
And there's no app that you intend to use. But I also read that there's supposed to be on-site management that handles the parking. And the question would be, does that on-site management also handle the rest of the building? It's not unique to just handling the parking.
My understanding is that the on-site management will be handling both.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yep.
That's my understanding.
And Mr. Lothian, oh, sorry, Carmel, go ahead.
I just had one more question. So where does the on-site manager park?
That's a good question. That will be handled by the operational management. My thought is the on-site manager will probably have a space in the residential component of the area.
I guess they would have to, because you're supposed to provide 20 public parking spaces, and that's not exactly.
They will not be parking in the public parking spot.
Okay.
Maybe it becomes one of those 6 spaces, huh?
Might be.
Possibly.
And quite honestly, I don't understand your table 4. What are you subtracting to get the difference? I didn't really get it.
Table 4, there's 92 spaces provided for the residential and the retail use. The 20 spaces for the public is not part of that table, and that's as identified in the redevelopment plan. That's for the calculation in the redevelopment plan. So really, it's 112 spaces.
I don't know. I can't see the math here, but maybe I'm just being dense. But
yeah, if you look on the left-hand side, there's 82 spaces for the residential, 10 spaces for the retail.
Right.
And during that time period, 6 p.m. to 12 a.m., you need 82 spaces for the residential, which is the entire lot of the residential, and 8 spaces for the retail. So that leaves 2 spaces as available during that time period.
Okay.
In addition to the 20 spaces.
Yes.
Right. All right. I got you. I mean, one more thing, I just take issue with your assumption that mass transit is available at this site. It's really not. The railroad stations are 17-minute walk and an 18-minute walk, and nobody really does that in inclement weather. And the 30% that you're saying in Montclair use mass transit, typically that has been the train to New York.
Yeah, and both the Walnut Street Station and the Bay Street Station are within 3/4 of a mile, which is.
No, they're not. Well, yeah, they are 3/4. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's considered close in the traffic world. Google says it's 18 minutes and 17 minutes, but walk. I don't. Seems kind of far to me for the average person. Thank you.
You. And Mr. Chiosa, I sorry.
Daniel, did you have a question?
That's fine. Oh, yeah, for Mr. Lothian, I just had the question. So with the current lot that is there, do you have a sense of how many spaces there are available today in current state?
The total number of spaces?
Yes.
Or how many spaces are available at any given time?
The total number of spaces, and because what I see here, is this talking about what we currently have with the site today, or is that not shown? Because that's what I was trying to high as possible. Not to hold, yeah.
It's the 106 spaces that are there today.
Right, okay. So again, I understand, future state will be a bit different than that, but there are times where it's quite high, and I'm actually thinking although we do have the peak for the weekday, time frame that you were saying, where you'll need all that is being provided, plus the 6. How about events or on the weekend? I know there's a couple of churches very nearby that are quite full on Sundays. Was there any analysis into those kind of event peaks? And again, both events that may occur weekly, but also just, there's the car show that we have, just a number of events that occur downtown and how that may impact parking.
Yeah, Mr. Gilmer, that's where those 20 spaces come into play. So those 20 spaces will be available at all times for any of those events, for the churches, for any activity in the downtown area. And then,
but how does it factor into the demand calculation, though? Because as I understand it, the demand is more kind of a weekly cadence demand. It doesn't really take into account the peak event periods, does it? Or maybe it does.
Well, no, for those 20 spaces available to the public, those aren't in our demand calculations. Those are always available for the public. The demand calculations are based on the residential and the retail components, and when they need the spaces.
Yeah, and I think you had it in here, but these public spaces operate as any other public spaces in town. Is that correct?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay, I'm just trying to distinguish public versus open to the public, because we have had people kind of say one versus the other. And so, open to the public, but it's, I don't know, $20 an hour is not quite the same as, public. And I think the reason I'm asking as well is as a matter of signage and labeling, just making sure that people are aware of the presence of those spaces and also the availability, which I think is what you were alluding to, Carmel. How will people even know during an event? You might assume that the lot is full, but maybe there are actually, 2 of those 20 spaces available. Or you look, I don't know how the visibility would be, but you might have a sense there's some spaces, but all the public spaces are occupied. So that's just one other thing I think for us to keep in mind. And maybe it's, more on the operations standpoint, but I think something that we need to address with this before finally deciding as well.
And those spaces are open to the public. They're not controlled by the parking authority. They're open to the public.
Right.
Just to clarify that.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Makes sense. Okay. Great. Thank you.
No problem.
I'm sorry. Could you please clarify that? What do you mean they're open to the public and not controlled by the parking authority?
There is no parking authority.
Yeah. There's no parking.
So they're open public spaces. I was just, there was a question of whether they're public spaces or open to the public. My understanding, they're open to the public.
So who controls the cost of them? That's the question.
That was my question too.
That's the property management. That's part of the PMP, parking management plan.
Well, there's a difference between paying 75 cents an hour at a meter, is there, or going into this lot where it knows what it's going to cost.
Yeah, and that's my challenge, is it's open to the public can become cost prohibitively close to the public if it is a very, very high rate. So that's a little, and again, I'm not trying to throw out a specific number, but there is a price point at which a very small percentage of the public has access to that space. And so, yeah, I'm just kind of wrestling with truly kind of public spaces, which we think of kind of metered and kind of a set level that it would cost you to have that space versus available to the public, but price set by property owner.
Well, wouldn't this be an issue, though, that is covered under the redevelopment plan, which is specifying that they have to be public spaces, and then shouldn't that be something that gets negotiated, by the township with the developer, because the developer has to enter into an agreement, right, with the town?
Yes, we have, Your Honor. Or Your Honor, Mr. Chairman. Apologies. Woo. Getting ahead of myself.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you're quite right. In order for them to be public spaces, they have to be reasonably priced. They have to be affordable by the public, as opposed to being priced, in an exclusionary manner. So, And I don't think that it's the intent, was the intent of the redevelopment plan in designating them as public spaces that they would be anything but that. But I think that that's what we have to rely on is what the plan calls for. And then the rest is on the town to make sure that the developer and operator are in compliance with that. Do we have other questions from the board?
Yes, I have one. Mr. McLeod, you've not entered into a redeveloper agreement with the township yet, have you?
There is an existing redevelopment agreement with the township.
Does it cover this topic?
I honestly don't know, Mr. Chairman, but
can we find out?
Well, and here's what I'll tell you.
Yeah, I'm not asking you for the specifics. I'm asking, no. Is it covered?
I know all of the items that are covered in the course of the plan that were to be negotiated with the township were negotiated with the township and exist within the agreement. I realize it's a circuitous way of saying yes, but I think the answer is
I don't know. The answer is I don't know.
Cameron, it was my understanding you don't have a financial agreement yet with the township.
That's a pilot agreement, which is different from the redevelopment agreement. I thought, Arthur, I'm sorry. I thought your question was, is there a redeveloper agreement?
It actually was my question, but now you've raised a different issue. And the chairman has raised a different issue. Do you have a copy of the redeveloper agreement, Mr. McLeod?
I do.
Would you mind sending it to me?
I can.
You have to do that right here, right now.
I'll send that to you after the hearing. So.
That's fine. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. And
I would say a quick review of the redevelopment agreement. It's silent on pricings for the public parking spaces.
I would suggest there that it's in the interest of the developer to make sure that those are at an appropriate price point, and maybe something that gets negotiated as part of the financial agreement as well.
Let's see if we can sort that out to figure out where exactly it goes, because it's beyond our purview as the board to deal with that issue. You just have to make sure that there's public space there, and we do want to make sure that the spaces are available to the public, are affordable to the public.
Understood, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions from the board?
Chairman, this is Mike Dannemiller. I do have a question about the trip generation. I'm curious if there was any commitments about land use that was assumed to be in place for that trip generation. And it'd be a big difference if this is a coffee shop as opposed to similar grab-and-go markets like we've seen in some recent developments. Has that topic been covered?
We had provided your office with a response to that in the letter dated September 18th, and I believe the latest comment letter from your office identified that was sufficiently addressed.
Okay, thank you. I didn't remember the exact response, and I thought I should bring it up right now for the board, just so they heard that you've covered that base.
Understood.
Thanks, Mr. Dannemiller.
Mr. Giosa, have you had a chance to look at this submission on the revisions, and what do you have to say about it?
I have had a chance to look all this over. Some of the previous issues with the ramp slope and so forth have been resolved, especially due to the fact that the basement level is not going to be accessible or used by the public. That made a lot of the issues with the ramp and some of the geometric issues in that lower level go away. So that's what happened in that regard. with respect to the recent topic that we were discussing about whether these spaces are open to the public versus public parking. I do have some questions about the function of these spaces, how it's actually going to work. We've seen on the plans that you're showing an island and gates at the entrance and exit for the garage right after the 90-degree turn into the garage. And that does not comport with the parking management plan, which says that that a customer parks their vehicle and prepays at a conveniently located pay station. So normally when you see gates and a traffic island, you would think that a customer pulls in, takes a ticket out of the machine, and the gate opens up and he proceeds into the parking deck. So I was wondering if if you could explain some of that in terms of how it would actually function for a member of the public to pull into the garage and pay.
And actually,
go ahead,
Alan. I can kind of cut you off there. The prepay wouldn't be unless there's a specialized event. I think probably the parking management plan outpaced the drawings here, and the idea would be that all that would be paid on exit, is what I'm intuiting from what management is telling me. So
okay, because there's also language in the parking management plan about an attendant walking around and checking to make sure a vehicle has either a proper decal or is displaying a daily pass or something on their dashboard, as if they had prepaid and put the ticket on their dashboard. So there's definitely some inconsistencies with what you just described and what's in the parking management plan.
And I think, Mr. Gioso, that's definitely a good thing to highlight and something that we'll need to clean up and just make sure everything's matching between what you see on the plans and what you're seeing in the parking management plan as well.
Okay, because just to elaborate on that a little bit, the township has run into some situations where quote unquote public parking was did not become public because the gates were down and there was a sign out that said monthly parking only or something along those lines. So having those gates is definitely not having the gates would be more conducive to a public parking situation than having the gates.
Yeah, and I think as Alan and others have noted, the security of the building with the fact that these parking spaces are within the footprint of the building, that's really the concern there.
Well, that I understand, and the fact that you said you're going to have a rolling grill at that location that's going to go down at midnight, and you would have signage in the garage letting members of the public know that from midnight to I guess 8 a.m. there could be no public traffic coming in and out of the deck. But in the hours in between, where you have, I guess you have an attendant on site, that's when I think the intent of the redevelopment plan was to have those spaces available for public parking.
Yeah, and I would suggest that there's ways to do that. It just has to be spelled out. I mean, even if there's gates there, residents can have access through the gate by a card. Public can have to take a ticket that they can get if they go into a store. It can be validated, or they pay when they go out. I mean, there's ways that in operation in buildings today, plenty of buildings all over the place that both allow for public parking and safeguard the residents. Also, so it's just a matter, as Mr. Giosa said, of consistency, getting it spelled out correctly so that we have an understanding of how it's going to function.
And Mr. Chairman, there, I know one of the we've talked about really the only hours during which it closed would be that 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. window. So that was at least the intention of the redeveloper in saying, hey, look, we're recognizing that there's a period of time during which, that parking shouldn't, right? And particularly within the building, there are, as we noted, those safety concerns. So that was really the motivation there, just to say, hey, there's a limited period in which the public wouldn't have access to the building.
We understand.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, and the other, okay, so there's going to be further clarification on the operational aspects of the public parking system. We appreciate that. Janice, if you could just, is it possible that you could call up Plan A2, which is the ground floor plan of the parking deck?
Yeah, give me a moment.
Sure. There it is. Okay. So I guess I'm zoomed. You can zoom in on the left side of your screen with the little zoom in function there. But I'm zooming in on the area with the parking gates. And right to the right, okay. So just to the right of the parking gates, you can see that's where the pay stations are. And so now we have an area here where we have the parking gates, we have the pay stations, we have this 90-degree turn into the garage, we have a trench drain, and I mean, I just think there's a lot going on here. I know you don't like to have pedestrians and these gate arms in the same general area, especially without some kind of, bollards or, just something in between. The area just seems like it needs to be cleaned up. And in addition to that, the fact that there's the loading zone just above that, and I'm just wondering about move-ins and all the activity through this area. So I don't know if this is a question for Sonny or for Alan, but have you guys given this area any additional thought in terms of pedestrian movements and circulation and safety and access? How are we going to walk from the garage out to the street and so forth?
I'm going to suggest that's probably a Sony question.
Yes,
if you're still there, yeah, there you are.
So I think related to the loading operations, that there is a dedicated door and a hallway that leads to more of the interior spaces outside the garage. So I think from a loading perspective, you do have a protected means of getting in and kind of making some of this movements. As it relates to people walking across, I think.
All right, well, let's just finish that. So if I have my van in that loading zone, and I put my couch on a dolly, and I want to get it to the elevator, I'm coming where?
Just zoom out. I'm sorry. No, I'm incorrect. It's not going that way. It's basically going across the entrance and then going to the
lobby,
elevators.
right?
Yeah.
Across the traffic lanes?
Correct. It is.
And we don't have any pedestrian striping or safety measures.
Well, actually, I think, Sony, you testified that there would be, not only that, A, this is all going to be managed very closely by building management, but B, that there's going to be a flagman, to help walk the truck down, and likely to be there while that truck's offloading as well, correct?
I thought he only said for parking the truck.
So the flagman will be there for the backing up of the truck. I think that's probably more of an operations question in terms of how the functionality of the management firm will allow the timing of the actual loading operations to occur, and how that basically functions across the use of the space. I don't think that they would want it during peak hours, where you're going to have a lot of turnover, a lot of other retail patrons and other people using this space. And so it's going to have to be managed during the time frames that make sense for move-ins to occur, where there's going to be less traffic within the garage. But having a scenario like this, where you are going to be crossing at the entrance, you would need their involvement to basically have it be a smooth operation that doesn't deter from people moving their furniture into the space, as well as having cars coming in and out as they need to.
Yeah, so I think to summarize it, it would be heavily dependent on coordinating with management, and management's already made the pretty clear representation, I think, through the parking management plan and elsewhere, that they're going to have limited hours for any kind of operation like that anyway. So that's I think the solution there.
No, that's not the only issue, right, Mr. Joseph?
Well, again, there's a lot of pedestrian activity near those pay stations and the gates. And, I presume that folks, after they use those pay stations, or after they park in the deck, if they're going to prepay, they're going to be wanting to walk out kind of like across the trench drain onto that sidewalk, to get down to the street. So, but I guess these items can be addressed when you get into the next level of detail on the operational plan for the parking. But as I said at the beginning, I just think this area needs to be cleaned up a little bit.
Yeah,
I think we need to have some of that design into the actual plan here, whether it be striping, whether it be mirrors or other safety measures that are provided for pedestrians that have to walk across this flow of traffic. Particularly when you've got you've got gates and you've got things going on, you've got a 90-degree turn. You just want to make sure that people just walk in wherever they please. Yep. Basically that you'd want to have it defined. Yep. And you'd want to have it defined in the safest way that you can. And that's
Yep, absolutely, Mr. Chairman. I mean, look, our goal is to have a safe, operable building. One that's going to make people, happy to live there, and see return trips, for folks going out all over your CBD. So, anything we can do to make that, more tenable, that's what we want to do.
Mr. Giosa, anything else?
That was pretty much it for me. I did have some questions about aisle widths and so forth that were addressed, as Mr. Stevie mentioned early on, by moving the electrical room around and adjusting some of these column locations. So I think they went a long way from the previous plan to this one in terms of the geometry of the traffic aisles and the movements of the vehicles within the garage.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I have a question, John.
Go ahead.
Just since we're looking at this A2, and the first we heard tonight was about this back door that will be going out into the little alley, and then another door that will go to the Forberg restaurant area. And I'm wondering, how are they going to be locked and secure and or therefore accessible? My concern is somebody could go out the garage, go into the alley, the door would lock behind them, and Forberg's door is not open, and they're stuck in this alley, which is gated on both sides. I mean, I wonder if some thought has been given to how those doors are going to function with each other for safety purposes. Just something to think about.
I think the answer to that question earlier was it was an operational matter, and that we were, I believe council suggested that maybe the owners would come back and tell us about that.
Well, I just wanted to throw it out there in case no one's thought about, the function of the doors, how they relate to each other and how they would work. Yeah.
Oh, no, definitely. When you brought it up before, definitely is on the radar.
Yep.
And we need some follow-up with that to understand, because that's, even if the doors don't lock, it could be a good place to hijack somebody. I don't know what lighting is back there. I don't know how it's intended to function, but just on face value, it looks like it's a pretty secluded kind of area, which is not what you want in garages, and you want to be able to control, to some extent, in and out. So.
Also, if you're thinking about restaurant employees parking in the lot, they certainly would need to stay beyond 12, midnight. Restaurants don't even close until then. So just, something to think about.
Yeah.
I'll have a bunch of my cards in there for false imprisonment.
Yeah.
We'll put them on the bulletin board.
Yeah, we can put some burner phones, a kiosk for burner phones.
Exactly, right?
So do we have any questions from the public with respect to the parking testimony that has been presented this evening?
Do anybody from the public I don't have any comments. I have unmuted you, but I don't think you actually have a microphone.
Questions?
And they don't have any questions. You can also, members of the public, you can also type your questions into the chat function or the Q&A function.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Okay. All right, Counselor, you don't have any further witnesses this evening, right?
We don't have anybody affirmative, Your Honor. I do have some of the folks from building management could hop in and start talking through some of the mechanics of the parking management plan and whatnot. But it sounds like, given that Mr. Gios has got some concerns about the layout, some concerns about, where exactly the striping mirrors, bollards, and, making sure that we kind of clean up those operational issues. It might behoove us to
come back with that next time.
Hold on those operational issues and maybe instead turn to some of the architectural testimony from the board of consultants.
Yeah, I mean, we don't, and given the time too, that's was going to be my suggestion, that we hold off with anything further until the next hearing to address some open issues. And I did want to hear from both Mr. Smith and Ward's architect with respect to the new plan and the changes and even the comments that we've heard this evening. So I can see Ira on my screen. Since I can't get everybody on there at the same time. And so if you would talk to us, and then Barton, can follow up after that.
Sure. I've been having some trouble with this laptop. Can everyone hear me? Okay.
So far, so good.
Are you able to hear me okay?
I can hear you.
I know it's late, so I'll try to move. Have egress drive lane is directly opposite the sanctuary. I think there's some misunderstanding. I'm familiar with both as a robust schedule and their sanctuary a lot of days of the week and evenings especially. So I do think some kind of screening would be really important. I heard board on board type of fence, something would be appropriate for sure.
Is anybody else having any trouble?
I don't know if we need to bring
I
up.
I am.
Yeah, myself as well. About every third word is
Okay.
cut out, Ira, unfortunately.
Okay. Let me try something.
Is this any better?
Yes.
Or is this choppy as
So
well?
far?
Yeah.
Ira, you're all
it doesn't seem choppy yet.
So far it's not choppy yet. Okay. Please interrupt me if it gets choppy again. I was just pointing out that the ingress egress at the garage entry is directly opposite the sanctuary of the Unitarian Church. I think there might have been a misunderstanding, but I know both properties well, so I strongly endorse some kind of screening. I know the space is tight, but because of the very frequent use of that sanctuary, I think appropriate. I know there's a grade change as well, so it's a problem that should really be looked at in the field and with the topography. There's windows in that sanctuary, so this is a real issue. I'll try to go through everything else quickly, but and avoid maybe even bringing up imagery. If we need to do that, I guess we could. I'll use my last memo dated November 4 as a point of reference. Reduction rooftop to clad the bulkheads. And like the rest of you, I'm seeing 3D renderings with that finish for the first time tonight. I think the intention is appropriate, which is to figure out a way to reduce the scale of the matching metal panel on the outward faces of those bulkheads, at least facing Church Street and perhaps facing the Unitarian Church as well, so that there's a continuity of finish. I get that on the interior of the rooftop, it would be quite nice to see the wood of the amenity enclosures and the wood terrace. Reality by reintroducing metal panel on the rooftop elements, the bulkheads. Been introduced at the top of the 5-story facade. I think that under explain it or even undersell it. As I understand, each of those recesses, so
Yeah, you're cutting out for me, Ira.
Yeah. Ira, I would say it's not quite as bad as it was before, but it's still a little distracting in that it's still a little bit in and out. So I'm not sure if, Mr. Chair, if you were going to pause at some point, maybe we can get the technical pieces fixed for the next one, because Ira, definitely want to hear all the pieces you're saying, but it's tough to kind of follow it. I'm not sure if you're pausing for in key moments or if I'm missing a word. So it's hard.
Ira, can you do this? Can you dial in on your phone, and then we'll go to Barton, and let's see if we have any better luck with Barton's connection.
I'll do. Thank you. Will do.
Okay. You have the number, or do you need any? You need the number? Okay. Barton.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Very good. Yes, I can hear you now.
Perfect. All right. So I think architecturally speaking with this application, we've had numerous conversations over the past few months with Mr. Stevie and Mr. Smith via Zoom and phone calls. I think they've been very productive. I think we can all agree that the plan follows the redevelopment plan now. The garage entry, not facing Church Street, and there's some details to work out with the lighting, but that's obviously seems to be a very good gesture with this new plan. The bulk massing is very good. I brought up a bunch of new changes for this time that I think are moving in the right direction. That includes the masonry facade changes, the enhanced Bloomfield Avenue facade design that the HPC and everyone has been concerned about. Mr. Stevie's made a really good effort to try to detail that facade. He mentioned that he's even spoken to the property owners on Bloomfield about the little park there to see, if that would work with the new design. So they've been very conscientious trying to work with their neighbors. The raised metal panel cornice, as you see at the top of especially the 5-story residential portion of the building, that detailing has really made the 5-story residential facade look a lot better. And as I've been pushing the entire time, is kind of the differentiation between the 3-story retail and the 5-story residential, that there should be more of a contrast and more of a dichotomy between the two parts. And the HPC picked up on the fenestration, that the windows should really be different between the two buildings. Mr. Stevie's gone to really good lengths to try to make those look different. The Norman elongated bricks and the coloring, it looks, a lot more architecturally striking now. And the idea from the HPC and from me and Mr. Smith all along has been that the building, look of its time, that it doesn't look like a false historical narrative or something, or try to mimic any, specific building or architectural pattern. So it's a classic building that works. It kind of has some, timeless appeal to it. This is the 3-story retail building. And then the 5-story, metal panel residential building is a little more modern, but I think they're working well together now. And Mr. Stevie's been pushing that very well. And then on the top, that was a big issue with the bulkhead at the top and where the generator could go and whether that large mass was drawing your eye to it. And Mr. Stevie has taken the approach of trying to break down that mass by moving the generator off, so it kind of has a step pattern, so it's not it doesn't look like a 6th floor on top of the building. And this wood cladding that he's proposed for, it actually comes in many different colors. So, if the board members think that the wood is too distracting as a color, it comes in a weather wood and some other interesting patterns and material that looks more like, kind of the darker color of the metal. So I think it would blend in better. And Mr. Smith just mentioned, though, it would be neater to have, instead of just a metal, bulkhead for the stair or the elevator at the top of the building, that it kind of is an amenity that people look at, and it kind of has a neat texture when you're up there on the roof deck. So, and then other specific comments I mentioned here, I think one of the main one, the first one I mentioned, is where the loading is. When you're looking at Church Street on the left side of the building, those double doors, which go into the transformer room, it's always been kind of an issue how that looks. And Mr. Stevie has tried to now color it and make it very simple so that it kind of disappears. So it does look better in the renderings. You don't really notice it as much as before. That was one of the HPC's big issues as well. So I think that kind of sums up my memo and review.
All right, thank you, Barton. No, actually, I take that back. I don't have a question. I think you addressed it. Did we get Ira back online?
Chair, I'm having trouble phoning in, but I relocated at home here. Is the audio any better or same problem?
You're real clear right now. So let's give it another shot.
Okay, excellent. Try not to move. I thought the days of being a human antenna were over, but maybe still alive. Okay. My first point was about how the ingress egress to the garage is actually directly opposite the sanctuary of Unitarian Church. There seemed to be a misunderstanding about where the sanctuary was versus the classrooms, but I can assure you some screening would definitely be advisable because vehicles coming right out of that garage would be pointing directly at the side of the sanctuary. I heard Barton talking about the rooftop elements. I appreciate the effort to introduce a softer material to sort of pull the eye and maybe feel like the bulk of the building was less, but I think it's not quite working. My suggestion, which I think Barton explained, was perhaps on the outward facing parts of the bulkhead to use the metal panel so that from Church Street at least, there is a sense of the five-story element kind of having a little bit of a own finial or top, if you will. I don't think a new roof on top of the bulkhead will help. I think it will call more attention to itself, but I think at least from the public-facing view, having one less material would be helpful. I heard Barton talk about the cornice, the new cornice at the top of the five-story metal panel elements, and I think that's a great innovation. I feel like the renderings perhaps are under-explaining what that's about. As I understand it from the drawings, the recesses and projections are up to 2 inches in depth, so they would really cast a more dramatic shadow than what we're seeing in these renders. At the same time, I think for this metal panel system to work the way it's intended, the joints themselves between the flush metal panels that make up the body of the building need to be discussed a little bit, and that's something Barton and I can do offline with the architect. But some joints can be so tight, they're like hairline and you barely see them. It was my understanding these joints are intended to be a little bit more expressive. So perhaps they're reveals, meaning they're 1/4 inch wide by 1/4 inch deep, so they cast their own shadow. I think that would add a layer of texture and scale that I think is intended, but which seems to be missing from the rendering package, which we also saw for the first time tonight. I think the facades facing Bloomfield Avenue are the most dramatic improvement. This was a big concern for the HPC. I heard someone refer earlier to representing what the HPC's concerns were. That was right up there. I think it was wise for the architect to bring the DNA of the Church Street side over to Bloomfield Avenue. It breaks down the facade. It gives you the feeling that you're looking at a building, as I like to say, in the round, meaning if your eye does catch it, it's not like, well, for lack of a better reference, west face of the Sienna, which is underdeveloped, under-detailed. I see a lot of eye-catching elements there, so I think that's a huge improvement. We talked in our memo, the update from last week, about the Church Street Plaza that's proposed. This was a question which perhaps Bruce can answer. It looks like it's been updated to reflect having true masonry pavers as opposed to a concrete slab that's been scored. Our concern has always been that the plaza not feel industrial or stark, and when you start to talk about a concrete slab that's scored, the uniformity of finish ends up producing something that feels like a large work area in front of a warehouse instead of something more human scaled. So am I right that that's been updated to reflect masonry pavers?
No, Ira, it's still intended to be a concrete, but it is intended to be a decorative concrete, not just a single tone of concrete, but it's going to be scored into a pattern, and it's going to be stained so that it has a variegation to it. It's not just one tone.
So I have seen successful versions of that. What I think I'd like to do while we're still in this phase is learn more about what kind of system you're referring to, Bruce, and maybe look at some precedents so we can really talk about the scale and texture and colors you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That brings me to last couple of areas. The material samples were delivered. I don't know how many planning board members got to look at them. At the risk of kind of surprising everyone on this call here at this hearing, I was kind of a big fan of the lighter brick, and I support the dark zinc. But when I saw them, I realized it's kind of an issue that I think does need to be rethought, and this could be something that gets resolved through the hearing process, but I think it could also be done in reviewing finishes after the fact. But I found the white brick, which has it's not a snow white, but it's a pretty bright white. It is speckled with gray sort of pieces, like an interesting choice, but I think it's with the dark gray zinc a bit stark. Plus, and this may have been the designer's intention, I think it'll look a heck of a lot like the siding on the Unitarian Church, as well as have a close resemblance because of the speckling to the stucco on the former library, which is also part of the Unitarian Church. I think that kind of close resemblance is actually not helpful. I do believe that having some distinction, in the same way I think the stylistic distinction of being more modern helped, would be good to not be so matchy-matchy in order to let these exceptional historic structures have their own presence. So I'd like to see that brick a little warmer or just a different color. I could imagine something more like what I think it's been discussed before, maybe pearl gray, more like what the Wedgwood building is. Although there too, does it become too matchy-matchy? So I think that's a conversation to be had. And once, of course, you touch the brick, it invites the question of whether the dark zinc is appropriate. I found the images shared by the architect of examples where the zinc was used to be very effective. It shows how the seams I mentioned and changes in the plane do create more character. It's not like a monolithic sheet of metal when it's installed. Even the way the sun grazes the surface, you get areas that are highlighted. And, so I believe in the zinc. There are also different kinds of zinc, which the board may know. There's cooler zinc, meaning bluer. There's warmer zinc, meaning it has kind of a maybe a more bronzy cast. I don't know, again, procedurally, the time to look at that full palette. In my world, the best version of that is actually done on site, where you can hold it up against the Wedgwood. You can look at it in the context of the Unitarian Church. You can look at it with Christ Church as well, which has a kind of orangey cast. So I thought I love the fact we got the material samples, but I do feel like there's another round of review on that. And then my last comment was just about the project renderings. I think they're very useful, and I guess I've already cited some of the concerns that flagged or that became apparent to me in seeing those renderings, how the wood plays out, maybe not so successfully on the rooftop, and also the real character of the jointing and the metal panel detailing. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, Ira, thank you. All right. I think this is as far as we're going to get this evening. And
Mr. Chair, if I could just have a moment to respond to Mr. Smith's comments quickly.
Sure.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Ira. Glad you mentioned that last piece. I also had a chance to look at some of the samples, and found myself trying to put my finger on exactly what it was that seemed a little. I'm not sure about it, but I think you just captured it in the right words, whether it's trying to match too much of what is already present, and in doing so, probably taking away from. We get the intent, as you noted, probably good intent, but in that context, just didn't quite seem to work. So I am, I would only impart that I'd love to hear what, as you move through that process, as you note, wherever that may occur, I'd love to hear some feedback as to what you think would help resolve that, because I think to my eye, it caught the same way as you're describing. So I just wanted to use this to emphasize that point and to ask that you do come back to the board with just whatever your thoughts are on that as you move forward into the next step to address that issue. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Understood. Thank you.
so, between now and the next hearing, there needs to be some conversation with Barton and Ira and the applicant's architect, and we'll need some clarifications with respect to the parking, how that's going to be managed, and the door situation, alleyway and such. And also, hopefully, we'll have the revised drawings with the designations on them for the affordable units. And I think that unless I'm missing something, that sums up the open issues that we currently have. Anybody else have anything to add to that?
Maybe just the pedestrian safety discussion.
Yes, definitely. All right, so Janice, when is the?
Are we going to have the operational discussion about how that's going to operate?
Yeah, parking operational, yes.
Okay.
Got to come back with that tied up with the pedestrian situation.
Right, and I think Mr. Chairman will do that all in the context of probably, somebody from building management will be in the best position to talk about all that. So I'll make sure they're available for whenever our next round is, which I think is what?
Well, that's when I just asked Janice, when's the next hearing date?
It would be December 7th.
Okay.
And if we can also get some clarification on the parking costs, where that gets addressed between now and then. I'm not sure where the best place to get that is from, but somebody here is the appropriate party to provide that to us, whether it's the applicant or whether Janice can assist or such, right?
Well, we'll sort that out for you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. Then we will see you back here in December. Do we need any extensions? You'll consent. We do.
I don't believe we do, but we'll consent anyway.
Right. All right. Very good.
All right.
We will see you hearing. Thank you.
Arthur, I'll be in touch.
Cameron, if you didn't consent, December 7th would truly be a day in infamy. You know what I mean?
Oh, boy.
Well done, sir. Well done, sir. Well done. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you. You too. All right. Do we have any reports. We don't have anything specific listed.
No, we don't have any reports. We'll have a quick meeting on November 23rd, just to do some housekeeping, set the calendar for next year. We've got some resolutions to adopt, but that will probably be a relatively quick meeting. So December 7th will be the next meeting for this application, and we've established a special meeting of December 14th for the amendment to the master plan.
Okay, very good.
I have a question for you. We were supposed, well, earlier on in the year, I think we were supposed to look at the zoning boards, what the business they did last year, and to look at some of their recommendations. I don't think we ever addressed that.
We have not had an opportunity to do that.
Okay, so because we didn't do it the year before either, right? So it's 2 years now that we haven't done it. So maybe we need to do that.
That'll be on our agenda for next year.
And what's going on with the stormwater plan?
It's going to be, that's going to be part of the master plan amendment at December 14th.
Okay.
Okay, so I submitted it to the master plan committee for comments. We did get comments from the township engineer.
Right.
And it's a pretty technical report, as you know.
I know. I'm learning more about stormwater management than I ever thought I'd know in my life.
So, so I really, because we do have under a time frame for getting that adopted so that we can have the implementing ordinances in place by March 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to get the public hearing done on that element.
Yeah, so maybe we can designate a January meeting to put that on the agenda with the.
Well, I was going to do that December 14th, the same night.
No, I'm sorry. The zoning board issues.
Okay.
For one of our first meetings in January, to get that on the agenda so that we can give some attention to that.
Okay.
All right, do we have bills that we can pay? You know who I'm asking.
Always. Always we have bills. Review the bills and I would move to...
Can we pay them? That's the question.
I think we can. I would move to approve the bills.
I second.
Very good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much. Have a no. We still have one more meeting before Thanksgiving. Okay. So
yes, we do.
So
yep.
So I will bid you adieu until that meeting. Have a great evening, everyone.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank
you. Bye.
Good night.